Chapter 141, Wielding a Sword to Sever Hatred, Gentle Urza. With the three crows captured and Chicalayan suddenly gone, Ultier immediately realized something had gone terribly wrong at Paradise Tower. "It's my fault," she whispered, looking over the ruined battlefield. Her voice was full of self-reproach. After reuniting with her mother and finally seeing how badly she had been wrong, her first instinct had been to persuade Jalal to stop, to turn him back before he did anything irreparable. Force had been meant as a last resort. She never expected him to go so far as to send the three crows to assassinate Chess. What should have been her private sin had involved Chess and Fairy Tale. If things had taken the worst turn, she would have gathered unforgivable guilt again. "Miss Ultier, you had nothing to do with this, right?" Lucy asked, baffled. From her perspective, Ultier and Jalal were both on the council, but that didn't mean Ultier was responsible for everything. Natsu's head poked out from Gray's vice-like hold. Gray still had him pinned by the neck, and Natsu barked, "She's okay, right? Ultier's a good person." "It's Ultier, Natsu." Lucy covered her face in embarrassment. Gray added quietly, "Still, don't blame yourself too much." He spoke with a protective softness that came from his bond with Ultier, like a brother to an older sister. He tightened his grip on Natsu to keep him under control. Off the shore, water surged and Juvia's head broke the surface. She stared at Ultier with murderous intensity. "Love rival," she growled, jealous and suspicious at the same time. Seeing how much the members of Fairy Tale trusted her made Ultier tremble. She buried her face in her hands. Her guilt deepened. Actually, the one who used Zaref's residual soul to brainwash Jelal and caused the tragedies at Paradise Tower. She hesitated. Her eyes seemed drained of life. Then, choking on her shame, she looked up at Urza and said, "It was me." Urza, who had only just composed herself, stiffened. "What did you say?" Her pupils dilated in shock. Simon, Wally, and the others showed open anger. Hugh exploded, rage written all over his face. "You locked us up for 8 years, made Sister Urza suffer. Are you telling me you did all of it?" "Wait, Miss Ultier, why would you do such a thing?" Lucy covered her mouth. "Impossible. There has to be a misunderstanding." Gray's mood evaporated. He pointed at the motionless Jalal on the ground. "The mastermind of Paradise Tower is that man," he said. "There's no misunderstanding. I guided Jalal secretly," Ultier replied softly. She shook her head, steadying herself. She told them everything without hiding any of it. Halfway through the confession, Hugh could no longer hold back. He lunged forward, intent on tearing into the woman who had caused so much pain. Gray reacted instantly, stepping between Hugh and Ultier and shielding her with his body. He could not comprehend why Ultier had done it, but he could feel the depth of her remorse. She wanted to die to atone, and something in Gray recoiled at the thought of the woman he cared for being struck down. "Get out of my way," Hugh snarled, straining against whoever stood in his path. He had every right to be furious. Ultier had hurt his comrades and the woman he revered. Simon, Wally, and Miliana glared with clenched fists, barely restraining themselves. "Enough, Gray. This is Urza's matter. We have no right to interfere," Chess said, finally stepping forward. The sudden surging aura of his magic quieted the crowd. The tension in the air eased. Gray stared a moment, then reluctantly moved aside, his expression hidden beneath his dark hair. Lucy's mouth opened and closed. She wanted to say something, but the words wouldn't come. Chess was right. As bystanders, they had no right to decide what Urza should do. Hugh, no longer blocked, took another step toward Ultier, but Urza moved first. She stepped into the center of the gathering and, with tears still tracking down her cheeks, faced Ultier. Her face was set, not with confusion now, but with a terrible, focused calm. The long sword in her hand glinted sharply. "Do it," she said. Ultier closed her eyes. She had no intention of fighting. Death seemed the only way she could atone for everything she had caused. She couldn't bear to ask for the chance to live and make amends. What she owed Meldy and the others could perhaps be repaid in another life. Tears slipped down her cheeks behind closed lids. Urza's sword flashed in a cold, straight line. Silence fell like a held breath. A few strands of hair were severed and drifted onto the magic crystal on the ground, then away out to sea on the breeze. Ultier, who had braced herself for death, suddenly opened her eyes. "Why?" "This is enough." Urza's voice was still cold, but there was no lethal intent in her eyes. The sword's light broke into motes of glimmer and fell away. She had felt Ultier's pain and believed in the sincerity of her remorse. Urza couldn't, in good conscience, take the life of someone who truly wanted to atone. Urza had always been a warrior who valued life above vengeance. No one understood the preciousness of life better than she did. Ultier reached up and touched her bangs where they had been sliced. She stood frozen, bewildered and trembling. "Wait, Sister Urza!" Hugh started to protest. Not understanding, Urza stepped up and wrapped a strong, quiet arm around him. "That's enough, Hugh," she said. There was a muffled thump as Hugh's forehead banged against Urza's armor. The raw heat in him cooled. He hiccuped and finally held himself back physically as well as emotionally. Lucy exhaled, relief washing over her. Natsu, gray and happy, loosened their tensed muscles. Mirajane smiled and whispered to Chess, "You were planning for this, weren't you? You knew Urza would stop. That's why you called her here." Chess spread his hands in a careless gesture. "Who can say?" he murmured, a small smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. The sea wind carried the scattered hair strands away. Under the quiet aftermath, Fairy Tail stood together, wounded, angry, and still human, while Urza held stern watch over both the penitent and those who had been harmed by her. Chapter 142. Chess, everyone on the council owes you a favor. A cough drew everyone's attention. Jalal, sprawled on the ground, opened his eyes and stared up at the sky with a face full of hatred. The Paradise Plan had been one step from success. He could not accept defeat. "No, it can't end like this. Wait for me, Lord Zareth. I will resurrect you and bring the age of great magic to the world." Even though he saw no hope, Jalal dragged his shattered body and began to crawl slowly toward the sea. "Jalal," Urza sighed. Whether from the long ordeal or from Chess's influence, seeing the man she once admired reduced to this ruined state strangely failed to stir the violent emotions she had expected. Instead of rage or confusion, there was only regret and sorrow. Ultier had told her that she hadn't erased Jalal's memories. She had only amplified and guided the evil already within him. The Paradise Tower's crimes had sprung from Jalal's own will. He couldn't be dismissed as simply being controlled. It was over. Urza didn't want to argue over blame anymore. Exhausted in body and spirit, she only wanted to get back to Lucy's home in Magnolia, take a long bath, sleep, and then return to guild life. Miss Ultier, is there no way to bring him back?" Lucy asked gently. Ultier's eyes were tired. She shook her head. "I've tried everything, but his obsession runs too deep. It would take a long time for him to change. And I can't be sure he'd even be himself afterwards. Unless we erase all his current memories and let the kinder person inside him wake up through new experiences." After nearly half a month of persuasion, that was the only solution Ultier could offer. "Of course, that's so simple. Why didn't you say it earlier?" Natsu clenched his fists, eager. "Then let me punch him hard in the head with my fire fist." "Lucy, are you serious?" "A hot head needs to be iced." Gray made a chilling joke. "Lucy, you're even worse than Natsu." How about we feed him a few of our best premium sea fish? He'll be right as rain," one of them chimed in. "Are you serious?" Lucy didn't know how to respond. They sounded like they wanted to finish Jalal off themselves. "Guys, this isn't the time for jokes," Urza scolded. Finally, Chess stepped forward and flipped a card between his fingers. "Let the professionals handle it." The card flipped, the magic card brainwashing. Ultier's face registered surprise. She had considered the amnesia route in the old story, but it was metaphysical and risky. They couldn't just toss Jalal into the sea and wait for someone else to pull him back. If Ultier had brainwashed him into this state, maybe they could try to undo it in kind. "You, what are you going to do?" Jalal, struggling to crawl away, saw Chess approach and panic flared in his eyes. He had no strength left to resist. Chess didn't waste time and activated the card. A pair of terrifying, spectral hands emerged from the glowing magic circle, passing through Jalal's skin and flesh and reaching into his brain. Ah! Jalal's scream was raw and wrenching. Brainwashing an ordinary person like Jude had been one thing. Doing it to a 10-wizard saint was another entirely. The power imbalance, Jalal's iron will, and the risk of a dangerous backlash made it brutal. Chess had no chance to be gentle. Urza, Lucy, and the other girls turned their faces away. Natsu, Simon, and the others watched in silence. They trusted Chess and knew he would not recklessly toy with someone's mind. The screams echoed across the tiny island and slowly waned. After nearly a minute, Jalal finally fainted again. "How is he?" Altair asked quickly. Chess brushed sweat from his brow. "He's almost there. Once he wakes and recovers his magic power, he'll still need guidance. I'll leave the rest to you." Jalal was simply too strong. Without keeping the brainwashing active for a long time, they couldn't hope for the immediate turnaround they had with Jude. Urza and the others let out a collective breath of relief. Altair's face, however, was troubled. Jalal would be imprisoned and punished. Her own crimes were too heavy. She had no right to stay on the council. She wanted to return to Grimoire Heart, rescue Meldy, and face Hades herself. "You can't leave the council now," Chess said. "If you quit, everything we've saved could be undone." Altair shook her head. She hesitated to bring up Grimoire Heart or Hades. Guildmaster Hades was a terrifying force, beyond what ordinary people could confront. She didn't want Fairy Tail or their allies to get involved with him. Chess's tone was firm. "If you step down, the council will lose a supporter. Magic guilds answer to the council. If there's nobody inside to stand up for Fairy Tail, the opposition will try to disband you." He made his point pragmatically. It wasn't entirely altruistic. Because of Chess's intervention, the council hadn't been destroyed and rebuilt as it had in the old story. The political landscape mattered, and Altair, as an insider, given her years undercover, would be invaluable. Mira smiled gently. "Don't you want to atone for what you've done? Staying on the council will let you fight the evil you helped create." Urza stepped forward. "We won't drag your relationship with Jalal into this," she said. Hugh, embarrassed, averted his eyes and muttered, I'll listen to Sister Urza." Simon, Wally, and Miliana had even fewer objections. After 8 years of imprisonment, they wanted nothing more than to taste freedom. Altair felt everyone's goodwill, and with a small, reluctant sigh, accepted their decision. She took out a crystal ball and contacted the council. The Paradise Tower incident had involved a dark cult and numerous innocent victims, a disaster that required a full response. The counselors who had been investigating the disappearances of the Three Crows and Chikalayan listened and went pale. They had never imagined that Chikalayan, Jalal, had been capable of such a scheme right under their noses. The R system was forbidden research that could have rocked the entire magic world. If Jalal had completed it, the council's reputation, and perhaps their authority, would have collapsed. Within hours, the council's enforcement unit led by Lahar was dispatched. Using their advanced magic-powered warships, they reached the small island quickly. Chess and Hugh released the guards and laborers. All were taken to the council for interrogation. As the investigations deepened, horror spread through the council like a chill. Because Fairy Tail had stopped the conspiracy, the council treated them as loyal contributors. After the basic questioning, they were invited to the council's reception room, where the short, kindly Mr. Yajima received them with a pot of brewed black tea. Even Natsu, who usually ignored formalities, took the cup politely. Mr. Yajima was an exception to their usual mistrust of the council. "You really did a wonderful job this time, Chess," Yajima said, smiling slightly. "Everyone in the council owes you a favor." "Mr. Yajima, you flatter me. I was just lucky," Chess replied, scratching his head. "This wasn't simply luck," Yajima said with a sigh. Jalal, capable of reaching 10 Wizard Saint level with a thought projection, was a dangerous opponent. On the continent of Ishal, few could stand against him. Then Yajima's tone brightened. "But well done. This old man will be retiring soon, so you lot remember to behave." Chess shrank back a little at the affectionate admonition. Even he couldn't maintain his usual swagger in front of the man. "Aha, Chess, who knew you had such a side?" Mira giggled. Lucy burst out laughing too. Yajima's eyes twinkled. "Rookie Lucy," Yajima said, turning to her. "I've heard a few rumors about you recently." Lucy straightened, suddenly serious and flustered. "I'm sorry, really, I am," she stammered, bowing apologetically. Mr. Yajima, what will the council do about Simon and the others, and Jalal?" Urza asked. On the way back, she had invited Simon and the others to join Fairy Tail, but they had declined. After 8 years of imprisonment, they wanted to see the world freely. Yajima grew somber. "As for Simon and the others who returned with you, with your testimonies, If the investigation confirms they were victims of the Paradise Tower, they will be released. As for Jelal, there's no final decision yet, but life imprisonment is likely. Urza held her teacup in silence, happy for Simon and the others' freedom, but heavy at the outcome awaiting Jalal. Then Yajima leaned forward, eyes narrowing at Chess. There's something important for Fairy Tale. We just passed a motion about your participation in this year's 10 Wizard assessment. Chess's jaw dropped. A 10 Wizard Saint, an impressive title, but it came with great responsibilities and obligations. He had never asked for such a thing. Me? A 10 Wizard Saint? This motion was proposed by Makarov, Yajima said. If you take part in the assessment, you must give it your all. This is a matter of Fairy Tale's honor. Chess's mouth twitched. Of course, Makarov had his hand in this. If Chess were chosen, Makarov might retire early. After all, a single guild cannot have 2 10 Wizard Saints. Chess's first thought was to bolt back to Magnolia and make Makarov withdraw the proposal. Failing that, he'd try to get his name removed and put Guildarts up instead. Chapter 143. Give your all for the glory of the guild. By the time everyone returned to Magnolia, it was already night, but the commotion they caused had residents peering out their windows. The troublemakers of Fairy Tale had arrived aboard an official council airship, something no one expected. People in town rubbed their eyes in disbelief. Even Mr. Chess's neighbors were convinced they must have gone to bed too early. Whenever the council appeared, they were always cordial to Fairy Tale, but this level of reception was extravagant. Did the council actually send an airship for Fairy Tale? A passerby gasped. Is Chess in with the council now? What happened? Pinch me. I must be dreaming. Don't pinch like that. Ow, that hurts. As the questions buzzed through the night, the airship descended slowly and landed on the large lake at the edge of town. After thanking Lahar, who had led the team, Mr. Chess and the others headed for the construction site of the new guild. In just one day, the work had progressed drastically. The main structure was essentially finished. A 3-story building in the style of a Western castle stood on the shore, and from below its silhouette hinted at the grandeur to come. The site was quiet, save for a dim light at the temporary bar. Makarov, who had heard they were coming, sat there with a drink. Seeing the group arrive, the slightly tipsy old man raised a hand. "Welcome back," he called. "We're back, Guildmaster," Mira replied with a smile. Everyone sat at the tables near the bar. Juvia, despite coming back with them and growing comfortable on the way, crouched in an inconspicuous shadowed corner, eyes fixed entirely on the unclothed Gray. She wasn't a Fairy Tale member yet, and she still felt intimidated by Makarov's presence. "I know what happened. Chess, Mira, you did well," Makarov said, then suddenly burst into laughter. He bounced over to Mr. Chess, clapped him on the shoulder, and chuckled. "Not bad, not bad. You didn't let the old man down." "Heh, little Ya said Mikolo and Og looked like they'd swallowed something foul," he added, laughing harder. Mikilo and Og, 2 counselors who had always criticized Fairy Tale and even called for its disbandment, had been thoroughly put in their place, and the thought of their faces made Makarov chortle. Before the laughter had fully died, Chess's expression hardened. He politely removed Makarov's hand from his shoulder and spoke tersely. "There's a serious matter, old Makarov. You have to explain the Wizard Saint proposal. Why was it submitted?" Lucy started, Old Makarov," while Mira covered her mouth, amused. Urza sighed and pressed a hand to her forehead, and even Natsu and Gray, who had been at each other's throats, paused and looked over. Makarov feigned puzzlement and pouted. "It's the title every mage on the continent dreams of. I thought you'd be pleased." "I'm not like the 2 simple-minded idiots from our guild who jump into any pit they see," Chess muttered. "Withdraw the proposal. I have no interest." Natsu and Gray's veins bulged in anger. "What did you say, Chess?" Lucy's eyebrows shot up. Typical, they'd taken the bait. Juvia, watching from the dark, felt proud of Gray's bluster. Makarov, still trying to be reasonable, said, "You can't just withdraw. It's been passed by the council. If you try to pull it back, you'll face a hefty fine." "How much?" came the question. Ches waved a hand grandly. "Don't worry about guild funds. I'll pay it myself." With nearly $1 billion in assets, Ches didn't see money as an obstacle. Makarov's surprise turned to exasperation. "No, you can't. You're not some penniless rookie who can't pay rent." Happy popped out of Lucy's chest to tease. Hey, Lucy, the guildmaster seems to be calling you. Lucy elbowed the flying cat and grumbled. Makarov cleared his throat and grew serious. Chess, the fine is one thing, but Fairy Tale's reputation is another. If this goes public, people will say our guild cowers and surrenders. That's fine. It's your pride that would be hurt, Ches replied coolly. That made Makarov wince. He tried a different angle. There are mages in our guild better suited for the Wizard Saint title than I am, right? Seeing no easy way to withdraw the proposal, Ches played his trump card. For example, guild arts. A hush fell. So, guild arts? Natsu and Gray sighed, disappointed. Makarov's expression dimmed, memory of the past flashed across his face. Mira explained softly. 3 years ago, the guildmaster mentioned it, and guild arts left to take on a 100-year quest. Makarov leapt up and gave Chess a fatherly thump on the head. 100-year quests are not something to take lightly. Even if you've advanced rapidly in 2.5 years, a 10-year quest is probably your limit. A 100-year quest, no one can guarantee you come back. The danger is unimaginable. Looking pitiful with his hands over his head, Chess's shoulders drooped. Makarov sighed and strode back to the bar. Fine, if you don't want to be assessed, I'll go to the council tomorrow and withdraw it. I'll take their ridicule. It's okay. Chess moved to protest. Guildmaster. When Makarov turned, his face brightened as if a new plan had struck him. Wait, if you insist on trying, then do it. Give your all for the glory of the guild. His grin erased any trace of the lonely old man's sorrow. Chess stared. The old rogue was playing me. Mira grinned knowingly. Urza, fingers at her chin, remarked dryly, the guildmaster's acting skills are something else. Lucy muttered and privately grieved for Chess for 3 seconds. Natsu and Gray cheered as if the assessment were their own fight. Then Makarov made the terms clear. Chess could try, but 3 conditions. He could not guarantee passing. If he became a wizard saint, he would not meddle in council politics, and he would not become guildmaster. Chess agreed. Makarov nodded. What he wanted was for Chess to be tempered by seeing more of the world and to grow, not necessarily to win. With that settled, Makarov relaxed. Another thing, he said, looking toward the dark corner where Juvia hid, since you're here, come out. Moonlight bathed the scaffolding. For a moment, only piles of metal were visible. Then a voice squealed. Gray-sama's naked body, and a head with heart-filled eyes popped up from behind the pipes. Underwear? Where? Oh, it's still there. Gray muttered, half embarrassed. Juvia, realizing she'd been caught, shuffled into the light and approached Makarov shyly, her cheeks pink. Mr. Makarov, have you had dinner? Yes, have you? He answered, perfectly serious. Thank you for your concern. Juvia has eaten too, she replied, blinking, and the strained awkwardness broke. Makarov cleared his throat and went straight to the point. Juvia, would you like to join Fairy Tale? He had been keeping an eye on her. She had been around the construction site more than he had. She started, unsure. Can I? Of course, Makarov said. What happened before is behind us. You were following orders. He spread his hand. If you are willing, Fairy Tale will welcome you. Guiding those who went astray back to the right path was the duty of an elder like him. Juvia's eyes glistened. The warmth and laughter she'd experienced with Gray and the others had convinced her that this was what a home felt like, so different from the cold, ruthless Phantom Lord. Tears spilled down her cheeks. Yes, Juvia wants to. Juvia will join Fairy Tale. She reached out, trembling, and Makarov clasped her hand. Everyone smiled. Lucy rushed forward to congratulate her first, already picturing herself as a senior member teaching the new recruit. Juvia narrowed her eyes and sulkily called Lucy a love rival. And no, you've got it wrong. Lucy waved her arms frantically, then froze as Happy reminded her Juvia was an S-class mage in Phantom Lord. Lucy retreated behind Chess, mortified. Makarov cut in diplomatically. The new guild will be finished soon. We'll announce membership officially when it is. If nothing goes wrong, there should be other newcomers by then. When he went to the council with the 3 crows earlier, he'd run into an old friend among the counselors, the gentle Ms. Burno. In conversation, he learned she'd taken a shine to Gajeel. Makarov learned that the former Phantom Lord Dragon Slayer reminded Ms. Burno of her late son. Before the war, she had even tried to persuade Gajeel to leave Josei and find a more fitting guild. Out of concern, she'd told Makarov where Gajeel was now, and asked him to guide the young man to the right path and bring him to fairy tale. Makarov had already begun to make plans. In the next few days, he would try to find Gajeel, when the new guild was complete, announce their new members together. Chapter 144, New Card, The Legendary Strongest Warrior. It was late, the moon bright and the stars sparse, when the conversation with Master Makarov finally ended. Inside the little rental house by the riverbank, the night was warm and loose. "Ah, I'm dying to know who else will join besides Jupiter." Natsu, the true owner of the house, was sprawled on the floor by the coffee table, cheeks puffed like a blowfish. "The master's mean, says I'll find out when the time comes." "I want to know now." Happy, the house's secondary owner, lazed by the fireplace and groomed his claws. "Natsu, you mean that pervy rain woman? Remember, Jupiter's Phantom Lord's magical convergence weapon." Seeing them so at ease and completely unconcerned with boundaries, Lucy, the house's nominal owner, couldn't help but snap back. "Whether it's Jupiter or that pervy rain woman, that's way too rude to say about a cute girl. And this is my house. What are you two doing here?" "Stupid cat, get your filthy paws off that." As her words sped up, spittle flew from Lucy's furious mouth. At that moment, the bathroom door, left slightly ajar, eased open. Urza shook out crimson hair still dotted with water. Even wrapped in a towel, her perfect form and firm skin were impossible to hide. She walked over contentedly and waved at Chess, the card player, who sat quietly sipping tea on the sofa. "Sorry, Chess, did I keep you waiting?" "It's fine. Just about time for a pot of tea." Chess set his teacup down and rose. The 3 crows of the Dark Guild had bounties from the council. Makarov had already used that money to cover damages from the battle, but the house itself was ruined and needed rebuilding. With nowhere else to go, Lucy's riverside place had naturally become an excellent free refuge. "Chess is one thing, but Urza, you live in the girls' dorm. Why are you here?" Lucy was on the verge of explosion. She appreciated that these guys didn't treat her like an outsider, but they were a little too unreserved. If she could choose, she wanted a sliver of privacy. "I always feel more relaxed at Lucy's place." Urza looked a little sheepish. "I'm sorry, Lucy. Am I being a bother?" The sudden sincerity flustered Lucy. It's fine. I'm used to it." No sooner had she said it than she regretted it. Her mind filled with a protesting inner voice. Why didn't you just tell her no? But then a kinder thought surfaced. "We're comrades. Urza has helped us a lot. You can't just kick her out." In the end, soft-hearted Lucy gave up and plopped onto the sofa with a sigh. "Don't worry, Lucy. I won't freeload. I'll cover this month's and next month's rent," Chess said, returning from the bathroom door. I can chip in for utilities," Urza added. "Really? That's great." Lucy's worries evaporated. Her big eyes blinked, shining with the unmistakable glow of someone relieved about money. "Then, Chess, you can stay here as long as you want. Well, at least a month. And Urza, the bathroom is always open for you." Happy watched her money-grubbing grin and muttered with a curled tongue. "Natsu, I have witnessed the ugly side of humanity." "Nah, Lucy's just like that," Natsu agreed emphatically. Lucy's mouth twitched. "Hey, I'm talking about you two freeloaders." In the end, Urza, despite saying she'd go back to the dorm, stayed. She didn't like leaving Lucy alone with 2 half-grown idiots. Natsu and Happy had hoped for a wild, late-night session of King, but everyone had been busy and exhausted, so that plan evaporated. Moonlight spilled across the quiet street and into the cramped little house. Urza and Lucy, being girls, took the bed. Chess, Natsu, and Happy made do on the floor. Listening to Natsu's loud snores, Chess used Happy as a pillow, closed his eyes, and sank his consciousness into the card space. After the Jalal incident, then Ultir, then the council's investigation, Chess finally had time to learn about his new partners. The card space, too, reflected a late-night stillness. There's no real day or night there. The realm simulates weather and a routine, so the card monsters can have a regular life synced with reality. Greeting the cards that sensed him, Chess transformed into a streak of dark gold light and entered a newly opened area. It was a space of shadow and light. Standing outside, he could feel a razor-sharp fighting intent flowing from the chaos aura. Like Lucy's star spirits, every new card Chess acquired required a contract. The ritual wasn't filled with legalese, more of a formal greeting. After all, Chess was the absolute master of his deck, provided he had the power to back it up, like Osiris, the Sky Dragon. The two new cards that had burst from Jelal were a bound set, the monster card Chaos Soldier and the magic card Chaos Ritual. Chaos Soldier, an 8-star monster card born from a chaotic weave of light and darkness. Exceptional in both attack and defense, legendary as the strongest warrior. Chaos Ritual, a ritual magic card for the special summoning of Chaos Soldier. If Chaos Black Magician was the pinnacle of magical abyss, then Chaos Soldier was undoubtedly the supreme ruler of the warrior domain. In the past, summoning such an 8-star monster would have been a great struggle for chess. But now, as someone who possessed Saint 10-level magic power, contracting with it was hardly impossible. The moment he stepped through the chaos barrier, an overwhelming killing aura smashed towards him. Before him lay a battlefield plain littered with swords, spears, and halberds against a chaotic sky. On the lone hill at the center stood a towering warrior in black and gold armor, sword and shield in hand. Bathed in chaos light, he opened his eyes and fixed them on Chess. "Summoned by contract," the warrior intoned slowly. "Are you my master?" Back in Lucy's room, after tossing and turning several times, Lucy finally yanked back a corner of her blanket and sat bolt upright. "I can't sleep at all." Her eyes were red at the rims. Natsu's snoring had kept her awake. "He won't quiet down unless you coax him." Urza stirred and opened her eyes. Giving Lucy a confident, leave-it-to-me look, she slipped from bed, snagged Natsu's scarf, hefted him up, and delivered a solid blow to his abdomen. Poof! Natsu folded to the floor as a tiny white soul-shaped puff escaped his mouth. Urza slapped it back in with a backhand, clapped her hands, and returned to bed. Lucy watched, wide-eyed. "No wonder it's you, Urza." "Lucy, if you still can't sleep, say so. I'm very good at coaxing people to sleep," Urza offered, fists clenched proudly. "No need." Lucy's sleepiness had vanished. She shook her head like a shaken rattle. If that coaxing were used on her, someone would definitely die. Urza smiled and hugged her gently. Lucy's cheeks flushed crimson. Morning sunlight chased away the night. At the fairy tale construction site, workers finished taking down the scaffolding while the renovation crew rolled in. Machines rumbled and orders rang out. At the temporary bar, Lucy greeted Mira cheerfully. Based on her bright face, she'd slept well in Urza's embrace and no longer had to worry about rent. Happy floated listlessly. "Aye, my back and waist ache again, like on Karuna Island. Damn it! I couldn't even beat Urza in my dreams and my stomach still hurts. I must get my revenge," Natsu grumbled. Lucy offered an awkward, polite smile. Did it ever occur to him he was probably already beaten? "Oh, I heard that," Urza said, hands on her hips as she walked over. "Challenging me, Natsu?" "Aye, I was only kidding." Natsu instantly transformed into his usual hyper self. "Humph, how pathetic." Gray appeared. "Gray, get along with Natsu." "Yes, Urza-sama," Gray replied. Chess sat at a table and quietly enjoyed the breakfast Mira had prepared. Natsu, like a child, ran up asking for some. Mira smiled and brought out a cake that hadn't sold the day before, briefly heated it, and handed it over. Lucy leaned back in horror at the sizzling, dark dish. She'd go a few steps away on reflex. She and Urza opted for milk and bread. Happy got his sashimi. "What about you, Gray?" Mira asked. "I don't need anything. I found a lunchbox on the way here. It looked odd, but it tasted fine," Gray said, patting his stomach. Work had been slow, and his wallet was tight. He had to make do. "How unrefined," Mira teased, glancing toward a pile of building materials. "By the way, Mira, that billiard table is already set up." Gray looked at the new table next to the bar. "It's a sample from the vendor. Spoiler, the guild's basement will be turned into an entertainment area." "Oh, that sounds nice." Gray nodded and strode toward the billiard table, picked up a cue, and weighed it in his hands. "Gray can play billiards?" Lucy sipped her milk, surprised. He's pretty good, better than Wakaba," Mira replied. "Oh right, Natsu's supposed to be good too," Mira added. "Pfft, Natsu can't even ride a bumper car properly. He play billiards?" Lucy sputtered, and milk shot out of her nose. Chess, sitting next to her, took the full spray. "Ah, sorry, Chess. I didn't mean to." Lucy flailed apologies. "It's fine," Chess said, accepting the small bare handkerchief Mira offered and wiping his face quietly. If it had been Natsu or Gray, he might have summoned his fists in a reprimand. "Billiards, huh? Ahaha! I'm fired up." Natsu abandoned his plate and darted over. "You Ice Cube, dare to challenge me? A challenge from a former loser? Sure, I'll accept." Gray's lip twitched. Last time I didn't even know the rules. Natsu snapped, snatching the cue from Gray. He crouched at the break area, one hand steadying the cue and the other forming a bridge on the table, staring at the cue ball with uncanny focus. His posture was so professional, Lucy was speechless. Can he actually play? Oh, watch this. Fire dragon table clear, Natsu shouted. With a thunderous crack, the new billiard table split. Smoke hissed, fragments flew, and a jagged fracture ran down the middle to a shattered hole at the far end. Billiard balls littered the wrecked surface. Only 6. Natsu scratched his head, disappointed. Aye, that's amazing. Natsu, you broke Gray's record, Happy said admiringly. Hey, it was only 5. Gray protested, pointing at the partially intact white ball. This one's not totally smashed. Lucy stared, incredulous. Is this really how you play? Interesting. I never knew billiards had this kind of gameplay, Chess said, rising and stretching. A game of who breaks more? I'll give it a try. Urza was just as eager. Re-equip, billiards lady. There's no such thing. Those two made it up. Don't be serious. Lucy groaned, pressing her forehead to hers. Chess and the re-equipped Urza sauntered toward the ruined table. Lucy watched, mortified. Rest in peace, poor Mr. Billiard Table. Bang! Chapter 145. Chess and Mira's Love Shack? Kana's Saint-Light protective seal sword. Even magicians had to prioritize work. After the fun and games, the strongest team set off to take a request. Lucy watched Natsu, Gray, and Urza dismantle the billiard table in a few brutal moves and winced. The last time she'd earned money, it had all gone to pay for damages. Subjugation requests made her nervous. Seeing Lucy so worried, Mira quickly suggested a low-risk, non-destructive job. A theater manager in the commercial city of Onibas wanted a magician to use magic to boost attendance. Onibas was even more prosperous than Magnolia, the same city where the strongest team had once leveled half a train station during the Lullaby incident. So Lucy accepted happily. With the guild's rowdiest crowd and the strongest team out on a job, the temporary work area grew suddenly quiet. It's so quiet all of a sudden. I'm not used to it, someone murmured. Chess sat at the bar, scanning the sparse crowd. Indeed, everyone's been really active lately, and the Harvest Festival is next month. Mira sat opposite him, propping her flawless pale face between her hands. She blinked, staring at Chess. Chess, are you really not going to take any requests? It's not very interesting, and I can't take S-class ones. He sounded unenthused, then his expression changed. How about Mira, you? You're someone the guildmaster specifically told me to keep an eye on. Mira cut him off, making an X with her hands. So no secret backdoor deals. No way. Makarov trusted Chess, not because he doubted him, but because opening a loophole like that would tempt fools to try the same and take on S-class work they couldn't handle. The new guild hall hadn't been built yet, and the guild master had enough to manage without emergency rescues. Chess sighed. Then, do you have the construction team's contact info here? He had time to spare and wanted to push forward the construction of his new home. He'd promised to help Lucy with rent. They were like siblings and wouldn't fuss about little things, but living in a girl's residence came with inconveniences. Oh, you're building a new house? Mira asked. When he nodded, she brightened and dug into her wine-red dress. Ta-da! Not only do I have the construction team's number, I even drew blueprints for you. She unfolded the plans on the table. They were still warm where they had been tucked against her. Her big, hopeful eyes glittered. Chess blinked in surprise. Mira had been with him from the Three Crows assassination to the battle at the Tower of Paradise. That meant she'd probably knocked these blueprints out overnight. It was thoughtful, but the drawing style was so childlike, it was almost comical. Ha! Tell me the details, Chess said, scratching his head. With his background in civil engineering, he could reconstruct a guild design from an impression, but he couldn't make sense of this at all. Mara leaned forward, the bar's narrow counter causing her to almost press closer than necessary. First floor, you enter into a large living room. To the side, an independent gym, because someone like you needs to keep fit, right? She pointed with fair fingers to the scribbled rooms. Across from the gym is the kitchen and dining area. Behind them are the restroom and the bathroom. For the bath, we need a huge tub, perfect for soaking in winter, Ches added. And on the second floor, the wall facing the street should be all floor-to-ceiling windows. Great view, lots of light. Mira finished, grinning. Chess stifled a laugh and tried to keep from blushing at how close she leaned. As a civil engineer, he was impressed despite the doodle-like quality. The layout was sensible. He pointed to the sketch's most ridiculous element, a little big-headed cartoon figure on the roof. What's that big-headed little person on the roof? It's a chibi statue of Chess, the unique feature of the whole house. Mira beamed, waiting for praise. It's hideous, completely unnecessary, Chess said bluntly. How can you say that? It's my favorite part. Mira's smile cracked, and she began to snuffle and pretend to sob, covering her face. Chess panicked. Compared to fighting, what he hated most was making girls cry, even if Mira's tears were probably staged. Okay, we can skip the statue, he said quickly. Really, the designs are fine. Just one condition, there's no design fee. Understood? No way. Of course I want paid. Mira straightened, then, eyes shifting, she added playfully, in exchange, I want to be the first to visit your new home. Fine, he nodded. At the wine table nearby, the guild's old-timers watched with envy. How are they so fast? They're already designing a love shack, Macau grumbled. I told you, with Chess's destructive power, why bother planning to rebuild? He probably intended it all along, Wakaba said, sucking hard on his pipe like the realization hurt. Hey, I thought I heard something about a baby room. Am I out of the running? Macau groaned dramatically. You two, stop being sentimental. I'm suffering more, Wakaba answered, and then more loudly. You still have a wife you haven't divorced. A wine barrel slapped the table with a thud, cutting off their nonsense. Kana, face flushed, scolded. Do you two not have work? You're disturbing my drink. You're drunk all the time. Don't lecture us. Macau and Wakaba retorted, then fell silent when Kana produced 3 cards with a flourish. This is a rare treat, my training progress, she announced. She tossed the 3 cards. Magic circles sparked. Light swirled, and 3 long swords made of shimmering radiance materialized, hovering in the air. Macau and Wakaba, who had been clowning moments before, stared in disbelief. Even Mira leaned over to look. Isn't that Chess's magic? Someone asked. Chess studied the swords and nodded. It's like the Saint Light Protective Seal sword, but it's been modified. Kana grinned and snapped her fingers. The card's magic circles spun again, and the 3 light swords shuddered. Chains of condensed light shot from the blades, lashing out and wrapping around Macau and Wakaba before they could react. The 2 old perverts found themselves bound, struggling against the brilliant chains that held them fast. So you hid binding light magic inside the cards to mimic the Saint Light Protective Seal sword's restriction. Mira's voice held admiration. Chess, calmer, made an aside. Kana inherited Gildarts's bloodline, and therefore tremendous magic power, enough to use Fairy Glitter, one of Fairy Tail's most powerful single-target attacks. Her problem in the original timeline had been the cap imposed by her card magic. Without raising that limit, she couldn't fully display her strength. Kana wasn't finished. With another gesture, she sealed Macau and Wakaba inside blank cards, the 2 old men stumbling and scrambling within the pure white card space as Kana toyed with them between her fingers. In the original world, Kana learned the sealing technique from Hugh, but Chess had already explained the principle, so it was no surprise she'd made this progress. You can do it, Kana. Your card activation and fluidity are much better than before, Chess praised. As a card magician himself, he noticed the improvements. Kana shrugged modestly. I've still got a long way to go compared to a monster like you. She rubbed her nose and smiled. Chess's casual tone made her smile falter for a beat. He really had no social tact. Then she brightened again. Thank you. Without your magic tips and the Book of Secret Arts, I wouldn't have made this breakthrough. It taught me things that raised my limit. She clenched her fists, eyes shining with resolve. I might actually have a chance at S-Class this year. Mira chimed in with a teasing smile. That is, as long as you don't run into Chess. Kana's confident face dropped. Between one person who spoke ruinous truths and another who hid knives behind smiles, the guild's pair of scoundrels had dealt a double blow. Despite that, for the first time in a long while, Kana felt a spark of hope. Chapter 146. The Strongest Team's Play Performance. Most of the guild had been unusually active lately, so after asking 3 old hands to keep an eye on things, Mira and Chess immediately set about preparing the new building. Time flew in the busy back and forth between the guild and the new place, and a week slipped quietly by. One early morning, Chess arrived at the construction site with Black Magician Girl in tow. "Mira, long time no see," she cried. Black Magician Girl sprang into Mira's arms like a hungry kitten, inhaling the faint scent on Mira's skin. Because there had been no battles recently, Chess had left Black Magician Girl to cultivate in the presence of her new partner, Chaos Soldier, learning to understand the power of chaos. Today she'd been allowed out especially. After all, it was the day of Natsu and Lucy's official play performance, and she wanted to help her master's friends. "Long time no see, Black Magician Girl. How have you been?" Mira asked, hugging her. "Oh, don't mention it." Black Magician Girl pouted, then peered up into Mira's face from the deep of her arms and said excitedly, "When do we leave to see Natsu and the others?" "We might have to wait a little," Mira replied, smoothing the girl's tangled golden hair. "Someone's coming with us, and we're supposed to wait for the guild master to fetch him. You haven't had breakfast, have you? I made some already." Black Magician Girl didn't push the matter. She complained a little and obediently ran to the bar to sit down. Chess, however, was stunned. Who needed the guildmaster to personally pick them up? If he remembered correctly, Guildmaster Bob of Blue Pegasus, Guildmaster Goldmine of Quattro Cerberus, and Old Man Yajima were all going to Lucy's performance. Even if they wanted to see the play, they wouldn't travel to Magnolia just to ride along with them. A figure who didn't appear in this part of the original story stepped out before Chess's eyes. Only he could make the Guildmaster take it so seriously. Not long after Chess and Black Magician Girl finished breakfast, Makarov returned from outside, and behind him walked a man in a large black cloak. Sunglasses, a mask, a hood pulled up. The man kept scanning the construction site path as he walked, giving off a desperate, sneaky vibe. If Makarov hadn't been leading him, it was easy to imagine a bunch of furious fairy tale members rushing out to give him a good beating. "Yo, Chess, you here?" Makarov called, then turned to Mira. "Sorry I was a bit delayed." "No problem. There's still an hour until the train I booked," Mira said with a smile. It was only a half-hour ride to Magnolia Station, and Lucy's performance began at 3. Even if the train were late, a quick call would sort it. Ches rose slowly, wiped a smudge of crumbs from his mouth, and then froze as his gaze landed on the cloak and hood figure. "Right? The largest investor in Fiore's railway, Mr. Jude?" The man's disguise was instantly seen through. Jude Hartfilia, Lucy's father, looked startled and began to furtively glance around. He'd done grievous things to Fairy Tale in the past and had been a major factor in the former guild's destruction. Guilt made him jittery. He feared someone would suddenly appear and rough him up. That was why he'd tried to hide himself. Fairy Tale's reputation for rough justice was notorious. Makarov's eyes widened. He put a finger to his lips and frantically shushed Chess. He didn't know that Chess had already met Jude once, right after the Phantom Lord incident. The reason the Guildmaster had agreed to accept a man who'd once hurt the guild and its children, even after Natsu's odd comment that Lucy's dad is a good person, and despite Jude's billion-jewel investment, was because Makarov had learned some things from his old friend Yajima. When he'd first been approached by Jude, Makarov had been suspicious. He went to meet the richest man in Fiore personally, and after a simple conversation, had felt Jude's genuine remorse and the obvious love he had for his daughter. That was why he decided to let bygones be bygones. That was the little delay he'd just mentioned. "Jude? Ah, so you're Lucy's dad." Black Magician Girl's shout made Makarov, who'd been desperately signaling to Chess with his eyes, nearly choke on his own words. How could he forget this reckless girl? "What? Lucy's dad? That best he commissioned Phantom Lord to attack us." "All right. You actually dare show your face. Finally, I caught you. 1 billion can't buy Lucy's tears. You scoundrel." Macau, Kana, and several others who'd been chatting nearby heard the commotion and swarmed over. Even Nobu, idly loitering by the job board, clenched his fists. Jude, who was used to polite company in quiet dining rooms, had never been on the receiving end of such a spectacle. He shrank back behind Makarov. He wasn't afraid of mere mages, but here were all of Lucy's cherished friends, and his guilt had already weakened him. He looked small and nervous. Only Mira stood back and watched with a faint, amused smile. With the guildmaster present, nobody would actually start a fight, but giving Jude a fright, that she could help with. Don't be fooled by her usually gentle manner. Mira could hold grudges and loved nothing more than helping Lucy's friends let off steam, even if it was only a formal threat. Makarov put on a worried face and did his best to cover Jude's identity, but even he couldn't help a little indulgent satisfaction. He'd stood stunned for a few seconds before shouting to Macau and the others to stop. It was all calculated. In the end, Jude didn't get the full fairy tale welcome. Under resentful stares, he followed Makarov and the rest to the train bound for Anubas. On the ride, the mood was surprisingly pleasant. The two old men chatted happily about Lucy, her childhood, and how she'd been since joining the guild. Perverted old Makarov even praised Lucy's figure, which left Jude awkward. At the station, they met Yajima as planned and ran into Guildmasters Bob and Goldmine, who were traveling together. At Chess's suggestion, the group had a simple lunch at Anubas's most famous luxury hotel. It wasn't the tastiest food, but it was expensive. Enjoying the high-end service was its own reward, and Jude had insisted he would pay for everything. After eating and drinking their fill, everyone headed to the theater for the performance by the strongest team. Thanks to Lucy and the others' promotion a few days earlier, the streets around the theater were already full of spectators. The party had seats in the VIP box with the widest view in the house. The tickets cost 10,000 jewels each. After a few minutes of waiting, the theater lights dimmed abruptly and the play officially began. "This is a tale from a distant past," came a gentle narration. A prince from a western land fell in love with a princess from an enemy country. To rescue the captured princess, the prince journeyed to the dangerous mountain of death. Lyra's melodious song, the celestial spirit's voice, dissolved the darkness over the stage. The spotlight found Urza, dressed in a prince's uniform, a sword at her hip. My name is Frederick." Urza's voice trembled, words stumbling out in terrible staccato. "Princess, I'm here to save you." She was so nervous she kept stuttering. The dreadful opening earned looks of disgust across the audience. Even Lucy, bound on stage as the princess, looked annoyed. Nobody expected Urza, who looked unstoppable in a fight, to be so stage-struck. "Ara," Mira watched with relish. "Urza's hopeless, isn't she? It's rare to get to perform on stage. She should be more confident and show off." Black Magician Girl snorted. If it were her, she'd strike an adorable pose the moment she appeared and win the whole crowd. Jude, eyes fixed only on Lucy, waved his cheering stick with all the enthusiasm of a doting father. Good thing he was masked, otherwise he might have ended up on the front page. As the audience murmured, Gray made his villainous entrance, handsome, menacing. In a corner of the crowd, a cheer of "Gray-sama" rose up. Juvia had come. Before Gray could finish his lines, he was absurdly felled by Urza's single sword strike. The terrified Urza skipped entire plot points, freed Lucy, then knelt dramatically on one knee. "Princess, will you bear many children with me?" The line earned a chorus of outraged complaints from the audience below. "So weak. The Demon King is pathetic. He just rescued her and is already thinking about children. What a pervert. Darn it, can my complaints keep up with this plot? And who's that perverted woman drooling? Yikes!" The play staggered onward. Gray summoned his servant, the fire dragon Natsu. Natsu's power was overwhelming. The hero and the Demon King put down their differences, shook hands, and decided to join forces against a greater enemy. Lucy, as the princess, offered to help. The hero and Demon King, after a perfunctory line, "Leave it to you," held hands, turned happily, and walked off stage without looking back. The crowd's complaints grew louder. Then an accident. Happy, towing Natsu while they attempted a flying entrance, lost his grip on the rope because the prop was too heavy. Natsu tumbled from the air, landed hard, and a stray flare of flame singed Lucy's skirt. The scene spiraled out of control instantly. Gray froze for a heartbeat, then used ice make to smother the flames. Urza, ever decisive, unleashed several glittering sword strikes, cutting Lucy's costume to tatters. The shredded uniform set the old perverts in the audience off into raucous applause. There was no time to lament ruined clothes. Natsu, in a flurry of chaotic fire blasts, sent the stage and then the theater itself trembling. Cracks raced through the walls, and with a tremendous rumble, the entire building began to collapse into ruins. Amazing. This is the most entertaining play I've ever seen. The interaction is incredible. After a moment of stunned silence, the crowd gathered among the ruins erupted into cheers, applauding a performance that had somehow become spectacular. The members of the strongest team stood frozen, while the theater manager, tucked in a corner, watched with greedily gleaming eyes, a shrewd businessman already counting profits. Just as expected, Chess dusted himself off and dispelled the magic barrier that had cloaked the area. Most of the audience members who, in the original script, would have been buried, were mostly unharmed, but this was the real world, after all. A little precaution was warranted. I underestimated Natsu and the others a bit, he admitted. Mira, standing beside him, looked a little apologetic. I thought this request wouldn't cause any real damage. Relax, Makarov chuckled. The audience's reaction says it all. He turned to Lucy's work on stage with obvious delight. Lucy's magic? That was outrageous. Jude Heartfilia, however, blew on his beard and scowled. As Lucy's father and the head of the Heartfilia Consortium, he'd always pictured her as the proper, reserved daughter of a noble house. Seeing her like this unsettled him. He walked toward the ruins with a heavy expression. Lucy, sensing him, tightened the prince's cape around her shoulders and lifted her eyes. Even during the performance, she'd had a gut feeling, and when their gazes met, it turned to certainty. Father, distracted with endless work, had come to see her show. That should have been a happy surprise, but Lucy's face was a complicated mix of joy, anxiety, and worry. She lowered her head, unable to meet Jude's advancing steps. 10 years of distance and assumptions don't vanish overnight, even when reconciliation has begun. Jude stopped in front of her. Lucy. Father, I'm so sorry, she began. Her vision dimmed as warmth spread over her shoulders. Jude had taken off his cloak and draped it over her. You gave a very good performance. You looked fine out there, Lucy. His voice was deep and steady. In that moment, he saw a shadow of Layla in his daughter, serious, committed, throwing herself into her work. The resemblance moved him. He reached out almost without thinking, hands awkward in midair. He couldn't even remember the last time he'd embraced her. Years? Since Layla's death? Longer? Before he could think, Lucy flung herself into his arms, burying her face and sobbing. Thank you for coming to see me, Dad. Lucy, Jude's meticulous facade broke. Tears glittered in his old eyes as he held her, at first tentative, then with growing strength. He suddenly understood how wrong he'd been, how nearly he'd lost the most precious legacy of Layla. The sight of father and daughter clinging to one another left the audience baffled. Was this another act? Oh, so it's the prince defeating the dragon and reconciling the king and princess. A super happy ending, a card player shouted with delight. King? The blonde guy's the wicked father? Someone else guessed. Look, the actor was right beside us the whole time. Another yelled, and the cheering swelled again, showering the reconciled king and princess with applause. Give the crowd a hint, and their imaginations fill in the rest. You're the theatrical type, Chess, Mira teased, nudging him. He smiled. A rare scene should be lively. With a splash, Juvia's head popped out from the rubble. Ah, Juvia wants to play Grey-sama's dog, too. Her declaration was a little more enthusiastic than accurate. The theater manager, delighted with the turnout, immediately offered to extend the performance and begged the strongest team to tour for a week. After friendly goodbyes, Chess and the others retraced their steps. Bob, Goldmine, and Yajima returned to their respective cities, while Jude and company boarded the train back to Magnolia. Jude's visit had another purpose besides watching Lucy. He wanted to discuss a formal alliance between the Heartfilia Consortium and Fairy Tale. Since Layla's death, Jude had come to realize how power determined fate in the magical world. He had once viewed guilds as profit-driven mercenaries, useful, but not friends. Trusting the Phantom Lord to return Lucy, for example, would have been a disaster for his commercial empire. But seeing Lucy's connection to Fairy Tale and experiencing the guild's unique bonds and fervor, even if directed at him, Jude had changed his view. With Lucy as the bridge, an alliance made sense. Makarov, unsurprisingly, welcomed the offer, but commerce demands details. Trust aside, terms and conditions had to be hammered out. Back in Magnolia, negotiations began. Makarov had wanted Chess at the meetings, but Chess had no patience for paperwork and summoned Mira, who knew guild affairs, to stand in. By nightfall, the basic framework of cooperation had been agreed. The next day, Jude announced the alliance at a Heartfilia Consortium meeting. News that Fiora's strongest guild had allied with its richest consortium spread like wildfire. Many factions who'd planned to target Heartfilia froze and changed course, choosing to strengthen ties instead. A consortium with teeth was a very different prospect than one without. Intelligence networks reported that Fairy Tail's popularity in the council had risen sharply. Even opposition parties were starting to hesitate. Nobody was certain why Fairy Tail's standing had improved so quickly, but one thing became clear. The guild had become an entity not to be trifled with. Barring royal intervention, Heartfilia would only grow stronger. Fairy Tail stood to gain plenty. With the Heartfilia fortune backing them, Makarov's funding worries eased. Requests from Heartfilia, merchant escorts, bridge demolition and reconstruction, land reclamation, road work, flowed onto Fairy Tail's request board, opening up more steady, diverse jobs for the members. All requests would, of course, be filtered through official channels. The council supervised official guild work, and keeping them appeased required a bit of grease. Makarov and Jude, veterans of the political landscape, knew the etiquette. S-class requests, however, remained closed. So while the rank-and-file grew busier and more proactive, Chess lounged around. He split his time between overseeing the construction of his new house and freeloading off the guild's food, helping Mira only when she was swamped. 10 days later, the scaffolding came down, the guild's exterior tiling and interiors were finished, and construction began on surrounding amenities, a swimming pool, and commercial street. The strongest team returned after their grueling performance, rested for half a day, and then dashed off on a request to subjugate a dark guild. The temporary bar and work area moved inside the new building. "Chess, do you feel like it's gotten colder lately?" Mira asked across breakfast. She propped her chin on one hand and, with a playful smile, produced 2 tickets from her pocket. "Not much going on today? Want to go soak in the hot springs?" At the request board, Elfman and Nob were squabbling for NPC roles. Elfman turned around at once. "Mira, I haven't found a suitable request yet. Weren't you supposed to escort the Heartfilia railway construction?" she asked. "Huh? Did I say that?" Elfman scratched his head, puzzled. "Oh, right. I did say that." He snatched the request and bolted. "I'm gonna do it, Mira." Mira waved him off and smiled benevolently while Elfman ran. Ches watched the exchange and wanted to complain, but when Mira handed him the tickets, he didn't hesitate. "I won't be polite then." Her face warmed and she grinned. The rest of Fairy Tail, having finished their job, agreed to a hot springs trip. So that night, 2 groups, the strongest team on mission and Chess with a handful of others, happened to arrive in Balsam Village, west of Magnolia. The village's hot spring lane, framed by an Eastern architectural style and winding bamboo paths, was a well-known getaway. Lucy strolled down a bamboo path with Plu after a soak, rubbing her throbbing forehead. "That was scary. I was so dumb to join Natsu's pillow fight," she muttered. One of Natsu's pillows had knocked her out cold. "Pooh, you're lucky you didn't die, master," Plu said. "Huh? You can talk?" Lucy froze. "Pooh, I just look like a dog, but I'm a celestial spirit." Plu continued in a familiar tone. Lucy's brain clicked. The voice, the timing, and she marched into the bamboo grove. She yanked out a very sheepish Happy hiding behind the stalks. "I knew it was you dead cat," Lucy snapped. Happy looked offended. "How did Lucy get so smart? I thought I could fool you for at least a week." He quickly added, "I'm sorry, I truly misjudged." Lucy had a mouthful of insults ready, but before she could unleash them, 2 men who'd been prowling nearby stepped forward. "Oh, what a pretty girl roaming the hot springs tonight. Lucky us." They closed in, hands wandering. Lucy's hand went to her celestial spirit key, but Happy, hiding behind a bush, stuck his head out and whined. "I'm not a pet cat, I'm a magician." He was more scared than brave. The 2 thugs were small-time crooks with little magic power. They posed no real threat. But Lucy didn't want trouble. "Open. Gold." Before a gate could appear, a loud crack split the air. "You lay a hand on my little sister, huh? You chose the wrong night." Chess emerged from a swirl of smoke, cracking his knuckles. The 2 men crumpled to the ground, unconscious and thoroughly incapacitated. Lucy blinked in surprise. "They're out cold?" Chapter 148, Star Spirit King, the star that cannot return to the sky. Lucy, are you hurt? Mira came up from behind. I'm fine, Mira, Lucy answered automatically. Moo, Lucy and Mira have incredible figures. Taros the Taurus popped up from the ground with heart-shaped eyes. Chess, you're stealing my spotlight. Happy, who had been hovering a short distance away, flew over and landed on top of the thugs knocked out on the ground. He struck a heroic pose and punched the air repeatedly, trying to look brave. Plu found it amusing and, like an elderly man with stiff limbs, clambered onto another thug and copied Happy's moves. Get back here, you perverted bull who ran off on your own. And you opportunistic dead cat, where was your courage just now? Plu, don't play with that dead cat, you'll pick up bad habits. Also, why are Chess and Mira here? A torrent of complaints spilled out, and Lucy's speaking speed picked up instinctively. Only the complainers in Fairy Tale could respond to a scene like this. Nothing was left unremarked. I heard a noise and came to see what was going on. I didn't expect it really was Lucy, Mira said with a light laugh. She wore the same loose, casual clothes Lucy did, hair still a bit damp from soaking in the hot springs. Wait, if it's just Mira and Chess, does that mean you two? Lucy's expression turned suggestive. There wasn't much to do today, and I had 2 tickets. Elfman was busy, so I came with Chess, Mira said calmly, tucking her still damp white hair behind her ear. Besides, Chess helped me a lot on Relic Island before. Lucy felt her mouth twitch at the familiar excuse. Helped me before was Mira's go-to justification for everything. For such a small thing, is she going to be grateful forever? She forced a smile and nodded. There's something going on. Happy crowed, braver than ever. Plu Plu. Plu copied, but nobody paid him much attention. Across the narrow path, another familiar figure approached. You were a big help, Chess. I was looking for these 2, Loki said, pointing at the thugs. He thanked Chess, then, as usual, made a sudden retreat, keeping a safe distance from Lucy the Celestial Spirit Mage. You actually accepted this kind of request? You must have been picturing yourself as the hero who saves the beauty and steals her heart. Lucy saw through him at once. Loki's fearful behavior around her had always been a mystery, and she was too tired to complain about it. This time, though, Lucy had misjudged him. The current Loki didn't seem interested in chasing girls at all. Actually, Loki answered solemnly, that's exactly why I took it. I'll be heading back to turn in the request now. He heaved the 2 thugs up with some effort and turned to leave, leaving a lonely, retreating figure behind. Loki's been acting strangely recently, Mira observed. She spent a lot of time at the guild and had noticed the change, even telling the guildmaster, who'd only given vague answers. Maybe all his girlfriends dumped him at once, and he's in despair, Lucy joked, shrugging. That wouldn't get him this downcast, Chess said, brushing dust off his clothes. Counting the time, Lucy figured it was about time she addressed Loki's oddness herself. A small matter? It could be, but what exactly is wrong with him? She mused. Lucy, do you know why Loki gets along with the other girls in the guild but avoids you? Ches asked. I know, because Lucy has no feminine charm. Happy shot his hand up first. Lucy reacted immediately. Happy was kicked so hard he flew up and got stuck on a bamboo in the distance, flapping in the wind. Nobody seemed overly concerned for the dead cat's well-being, but Virgo suddenly popped out, her eyes sparkling as she wiggled toward Lucy. Princess, I want one too. While doing requests, Lucy had been serious about training. The compatibility between her magic power and celestial spirit magic had increased significantly. The spirits now seemed able to slip between the star spirit world and the human world more freely, as Taros had earlier demonstrated. You won't even tolerate a little loss, Lucy sighed, holding her forehead and ignoring Virgo's showboating. Turning back to Chess, she asked, So Chess, why is Loki so afraid of me? Mira perked up, eager for gossip. Under the direct gaze of the 2 bright-haired girls, Chess cleared his throat, considered for a moment, then said evenly, I'm not sure. Pfft. Lucy flopped dramatically to the ground. She'd hoped for more. Mira crossed her arms and pouted in mild disappointment. But Chess put a finger up and began to reason. There is an easy guess. For instance, there's something about you, Lucy, the other girls don't have. Huh? Something like that? Lucy blinked. I know, your super sexy, super bold outfits. Happy proclaimed, unabashed. Lucy blushed crimson and flew at him in a flash to strangle the dead cat. Oh my, I didn't realize Lucy liked those kinds of clothes. But that would only make Loki more excited, Mira mused, tilting her head. If I'm not mistaken, Chess is talking about celestial spirit magic, right? Lucy said. Chess's eyes flicked to the masochistic maid beside him. Virgo, one of the celestial spirits, had to have heard the gossip about Loki, who'd been acting so oddly and was, after all, a spirit-related problem. Lucy and Mira watched Virgo expectantly. Princess, I don't know anything, Virgo stammered, suddenly flustered. She hated being in the spotlight. Before anyone could push her further, she shimmered into a scatter of light particles and returned to the star spirit world. What a weird reaction. Is Loki really tied to the celestial spirits? Lucy asked, already suspecting the truth. If Virgo wouldn't say anything, Lucy decided to call someone who would. She planned to summon Crux, the Southern Cross, one of the most knowledgeable celestial spirits, and see if she could get answers. The narrow path wasn't appropriate for that, so they headed back to the inn where the strongest team was staying in Balsam Village. Inside the ramshackle hall, Urza, in a ridiculous nurse outfit, was bandaging Natsu and Gray. Compared to battling a dark guild, the two's pillow fight-inflicted injuries looked worse. Lucy, happy you're back already? Urza asked, pressing a slipper into Gray's face as she tightened a bandage. Why are Chess and Mira here too? They happened to be soaking in the hot springs nearby tonight, Lucy explained. They soaked together? Urza's face turned beet red as she pictured all sorts of inappropriate scenarios, steam practically rising off her head. Natsu and Gray took advantage of the distraction to wriggle free and crawl away. Chess found a relatively intact space to sit. Let's not waste time. Start. Start? Another round of pillow fighting? Natsu leapt up, all energy despite the bandages. No, Lucy snapped. After a brief explanation, the expressions around the room sobered. This was about the safety of a guild member. Jokes were inappropriate. Lucy produced the silver key for Crux the Southern Cross, and, when the light flashed, Crux, his head and beard shaped like a cross, appeared, yawning. Bound by the rules celestial spirits must follow, Crux didn't overtly reveal Loki's true identity. Instead, he mentioned that Loki was connected to Karen, the deceased celestial spirit mage of Blue Pegasus. It was enough. From Mira's recollection of Karen, a model who'd appeared on Sorcerer Weekly's cover, Chess put the pieces together. Loki might actually be a celestial spirit. Lucy's face went pale. As a celestial spirit mage herself, she knew what happened to a spirit who remained in the human world after their contract ended. They gradually faded to dust. Most celestial spirits could only last 2 or 3 days outside. Loki had lasted far longer. That shouldn't be possible. The strongest team, especially Gray, who'd been close to Loki, broke into cold sweat. If Loki really was a celestial spirit who'd violated the contract, he was in grave danger. Realizing the urgency, everyone left Balsam Village and began searching frantically. Following Natsu's nose, they finally found Loki sitting alone at the bar in the dim hall of the new guild. Chess, Lucy, and everyone. Loki looked up, startled, quickly hiding the letter he'd been holding behind him. The letter was addressed to Makarov and contained his resignation. Loki planned to leave Fairy Tale. Loki, we dug into it. You're Karen's celestial spirit, Leo the Lion, right? Lucy went straight to the point. Loki froze, then lowered his head, resigned. So you already know. He hadn't expected exposure so quickly. Since Lucy even said Karen's name, there was no point hiding the truth. He was going to disappear soon anyway. Hey, Loki, what are you doing? Gray grabbed his collar, furious. Weren't we supposed to take the S-class exam together this year? I'm sorry, Gray. I might have to break that promise. Loki let Gray hold him. His body was running out of time. Please, just hear me out. I violated the rules between celestial spirits and magicians. I caused Karen's death and lost the right to return to the star spirit world. Moonlight streaked through the window as Loki explained, his voice low. He couldn't stand how Karen treated celestial spirits like tools to make money and used them callously. To protect his companion Ares, he had used his own magic to forcibly remain in the human world. Karen's magic wasn't strong enough to sustain summoning 2 celestial spirits at once. Her ability as a celestial spirit mage had been effectively sealed, and she couldn't take on requests. Loki had hoped that by staying, He would make Karen understand that spirits were living beings. But Karen didn't change. She even took on a mission and opened the gate while summoning, and her body couldn't handle the sudden surge of power. She died during the request. Because of that, Loki had been permanently barred from the star spirit world, a star that cannot return to the sky. "That's how it is. I committed an unforgivable mistake," Loki said, voice breaking. "If possible, please keep this from everyone in the guild and let me leave quietly." He put the resignation letter on the bar and, dragging his tired body, headed for the guild door. In the time he had left, he wanted to visit Karen's grave, to apologize until he vanished. "No, it's not Loki's fault." Lucy reached out and grabbed him as he passed. "I won't accept that you're being banished for protecting a friend." "Lucy," Loki froze. He'd never seen this usually playful girl look so serious. "I am a celestial spirit mage, Loki. Believe me, I will close the gate of Leo for you." Without giving Loki a chance to refuse, Lucy drew in a deep breath and poured out all her magic power without reservation. "Open, Gate of Leo. Open, Gate of Leo. Open, Gate of Leo." Ah! A blinding golden light filled the guild hall. Lucy screamed and pushed herself to the limit, calling aloud again and again. "Don't do anything impossible and reckless. If you do this, you'll disappear with me." Loki shouted, panicked, watching Lucy grow faint and translucent under the strain of her magic. "Believe in Lucy," Chess said, raising a hand to hold back Natsu, who was about to rush forward. Then, with a hum that set the hairs on their necks on end, an immense and majestic wave of energy rippled out of nowhere. Time seemed to stutter. Starlight flared, forming an overwhelmingly solemn figure, and then two great flowing white beards came into view. The Celestial Spirit King had appeared. Chapter 149. Cho Pai Lao, Go to Hell! The phantom of the Celestial Spirit King hovered above the lake behind the guild, arms crossed, suspended among a field of stars. Beneath him, the ripples on the water had frozen mid-crest. Droplets hung in the air, motionless and silent. The king of the star spirit world appearing in the human world would be an enormous event, especially here in a crowded town, so he did not manifest in full. Instead, he projected a starry image. Only celestial spirits and their mages could sense and speak with him. 3 years. Loki has suffered for 3 whole years. Lucy stood firm before the kneeling Loki, glaring up at the Celestial Spirit King. For a friend, for Ares, it couldn't be helped. "This old man is pained, too, by the anguish of an old friend," the king said, his voice calm and reserved. "What old friend? Are you talking about my friend now? Are you even listening, you bearded old man?" Lucy stepped forward angrily. The king's expression flickered at being called beard old man. "Loki is completely innocent. I cannot accept anything less." Lucy clenched her fists, grinding her teeth, pushing her magic beyond its normal limit. "I absolutely cannot accept it." "Enough, Lucy. Don't push yourself." Loki's face drained of color. He shouted in despair. "If I disappear, then my sins can be washed away." He really didn't want to drag Lucy or the others into this. He only wanted to leave quietly. "Even if you vanish, Karen won't come back. This just makes more sorrow." Having been through the Phantom Lord incident, Lucy had grown. She answered loudly, "There's nothing wrong with caring for your companions." A golden light pulsed and figures spilled from it. Aquarius, Taurus, Keisha, Virgo, Plu, Horologium, the celestial spirits answered their master's call and appeared in turn, standing resolutely beside Lucy. For a breath, the scattering stars were dazzling. Opening multiple constellation gates at once? Even Karen couldn't do that. Loki gaped at Lucy, stunned. Even the Celestial Spirit King turned his gaze. With his deep, ancient eyes, he noticed a difference in Lucy's magic, something that set it apart from her mother Layla's. The golden light faded. Lucy, utterly drained, went weak at the knees and collapsed into Loki's arms as he instinctively caught her. She lifted her head with effort and looked up at the king. "Since you're also a celestial spirit, you must understand. Loki and Ares' feelings, right?" Silence pressed briefly, heavy and awkward. The king lowered his crossed arms slowly. To be judged so harshly by an old friend, perhaps the only fault lies in the rule. Leo, who committed a crime for a friend, and the old friend who risked her life to save Leo. His voice softened. "For the sake of that bond, I will treat this as a special exception. By the guidance of the stars, Leo, you are acquitted. I permit you to return to the star spirit world." Lucy exhaled in relief and gave a thumbs up to the starry figure. See, that line sounded pretty cool, you bearded old man. The king, who had been stern the whole time, relaxed and even grinned. His long white whiskers twitched. The hair that was hard to tell if it was beard or mustache stood out. But Loki bowed his head, still full of remorse. He hadn't expected absolution to be so easy. If it truly is atonement you seek, then from this moment on, stake your life and protect your old friend. The king's enormous form turned to starlight and began to dissipate. His voice echoed from the void. She is a companion worth that sacrifice, is she not? Waves rippled back across the lake, droplets fell, and a cool night breeze returned, easing the tension. Time resumed. Hey, Lucy, Loki, urgent shouts came from behind. Natsu, Gray, Happy, Urza, and Mira charged up, faces filled with worry. Chess, however, stood a little apart, a faint smile on his lips, calm, because he already suspected the outcome. Judging by Lucy and Loki's state, whatever needed to be resolved had been. He regretted missing the chance to confront the celestial spirit king. If he'd fought someone of that level and gotten a card drop, it would have been something special. Of course, he'd probably have been flattened in the process. The king was at least on par with Marred Gear, the true Tartaros guild master. When Lucy told them Loki was all right, everyone breathed out in relief. I never would have guessed you were a celestial spirit, Loki. Do you turn into a big gorilla like Virgo? Natsu bounced around him, inspecting with childlike curiosity. Sorry, Natsu, Loki forced a smile. I'm Leo, a humanoid celestial spirit. I don't transform. Waha, lion, that's basically a grown-up cat. So cool, Happy gushed, preening at the idea of his future handsome self. Lucy leapt up and shattered Happy's fantasy. Lions and cats aren't the same species, and Leo is just a code name. Her quick recovery from overdrawn magic was thanks to the stamina tonic Chess had given her. Urza had noticed the Leo key in Lucy's hand. That's a beautiful key. So Lucy, is Loki your celestial spirit now? Yes, he's my celestial spirit, and more than that, he's a companion, Lucy said, smiling. Then what about our previous agreement? Gray asked. Don't worry, we can have Lucy temporarily break the contract, Loki said casually. Lucy stared. Had he already planned to break the contract before signing? Mira gave them a meaning look. Oh my, in that case, Lucy and Loki will be inseparable from now on. Don't make stuff up, Mira, Lucy protested, flustered. Before she could finish, Loki spun her up into a princess carry. From now on, I'll be Lucy's exclusive Prince Charming. Hey, where did you get that mood just now? Put me down, Lucy protested. I really want my own celestial spirit too. Preferably a badass fire dragon, Natsu said, dreamy. Celestial spirits aren't toys you fight with, Urza scolded. Loki, I have experience. If you toss Lucy up wildly, you can get a maiden scream, Chess teased with a smirk. Chess, no, you stinky old man, go to hell! Lucy barked, struggling and glaring as Loki carried her off. Chapter 150, Ulu Visits, The Downfall of Sabretooth. The next day at noon, the temporary bar counter of the new guild was busy as usual. Word that Loki had become a star spirit had spread through the place like wildfire, and the members were stunned for about 5 minutes. Then life went on. Those who were chatting kept chatting, those who were dancing kept dancing, and those who were drinking kept drinking. For most of them, it was enough to know Loki was alive and still officially part of the guild. His new status changed nothing in their daily routine. In the meantime, several women claiming to be Loki's girlfriends had shown up asking where he'd gone. One of them was even the granddaughter of a retired council member. What was stranger was how unfazed everyone was by the crowd. The girls didn't mind each other. The scene stayed surprisingly harmonious, and there was absolutely no love triangle drama worthy of a harem novel. In short, Loki was lucky or awesome, depending on how you looked at it. They'd come because Loki had promised to take them to a famous seaside resort today. That plan, however, was never going to happen. Loki needed time to rest and recuperate in the Star Spirit world, so he had given all the tickets to the strongest team yesterday. Urza had even pulled a cart full of luggage into the guild and changed into a swimsuit on the spot with shocking speed. The strongest team was probably already enjoying the beach. After the girls had been shown out, Mira turned her attention to Chess across the bar. Chess, how's the new house coming along? She asked with a smile. The main structure's done, Chess replied, his voice warm. They're finishing the interior. The foreman says it should be done in a few days. Building a delicate 3-story house in about 10 days without rushing was an efficiency even infrastructure fanatics would admire. Mira put her hands on her hips, feigning sternness. That's fast. Don't forget our promise. Don't worry, Chess waved her off casually. He couldn't help thinking that Mira cared more about the house than he did. Promise? What promise? Makarov popped his head out from the side with a mischievous grin, clearly enjoying the gossip. Guildmaster, I don't want you to know that. Mira silenced him with a playful finger and a cute, conspiratorial look. Makarov flopped down onto the bar counter like a sulking child. Watching workers haul furniture and equipment into the guild, he suddenly took on a more solemn tone. At the council meeting today about the R system, I met an unexpected young person. A young person? That meeting was only for guild masters, wasn't it? Mira asked, surprised. She remembered how Makarov had griped about not being able to drag Chess along when he left for that trip. She also didn't know when Makarov had started thinking of Chess as a potential successor, though Chess himself had no such idea. Her name's Minerva Orlando, Makarov said. Orlando? Like G-Man Orlando, Sabretooth's guildmaster? Mira cocked her head. That's right. Minerva is G-Man's biological daughter, and she attended as Sabretooth's interim guildmaster. Makarov nodded. During the Phantom Lord incident, the council had let Sabretooth keep its name rather than dissolve it outright, the way they had with Phantom Lord. Sabretooth was essentially defunct, and allowing a teenage girl to represent it was proof of how little importance the council attached to the guilds it considered insignificant. But that girl's magic surprised me, Makarov went on, looking at Chess. It's the ancient lost magic you ran into on Galuna Island. Demon, 18 fighting gods. Demon, 18 fighting gods. Mira's eyes widened. She'd been through the Galuna Relic Island incident and knew how terrifying that magic was, powerful both defensively and offensively. Chess was surprised too. He had suspected a connection, but hadn't expected Minerva's ancient magic to be the same one. Seeing that, it makes G-Man look like a fool, Makarov said with a bitter little laugh. He ignored such a talented daughter and went and made a mess with Jose. It's a shame. Makarov sighed as he remembered the scene when the girl had come to him, bowed, and apologized. Unlike G-Man, she was very polite. Even though she wields ancient magic, there's no arrogance in her. She doesn't look down on the weak. He'd asked Yajima for details afterward and pieced together Minerva's background. Mira blinked. Then why didn't you invite her to Fairy Tale? You always take in stray kids. That's how you found Urza, Natsu, Gray, everyone. It's complicated, Makarov admitted. Sabretooth's current mess is ultimately their former guild master's fault, but in the eyes of some, Fairy Tale is partly to blame. She doesn't want to join us right now. She was one of the tourists rescued in that incident, Makarov added. She told me to pass along her thanks to you, Chess. She's a sensible child, Ches said with a smile. How about I go and bring her over myself, as her savior? No one understood Minerva's potential better than him. At their age, she had been able to hold her own against Urza, who had awakened her second origin. Makarov smacked Chess on the head. For now, don't go doing anything rash that goes against the girl's wishes, Makarov scolded. Chess rubbed his head. All right, old man, I get it. He had to wait for the right moment if he wanted to invite Minerva properly. Their conversation was cut off by a chorus of surprised exclamations from across the guild. Macau and Wakaba, who had been chatting, had clearly seen something surprising. It's really in the deepest part of town, nearly impossible to find. Your reputation is terrible, you know? The people I asked looked at me like I was crazy. A cool-voiced woman with short hair and a sleek swimsuit strode into the guild, scanning the surroundings as she complained. Her entrance drew a few glances. Even amid the usual bustle, the sight of someone walking in like that tended to turn heads. Chapter 151, Becoming the Guild Master of Sabretooth, The Past of Ulu and Guild Arts. Oh, short-haired swimsuit beauty. The sight of Ulu, with that peculiar, slightly travel-worn air about her, instantly brought out Makarov's old lecherous side. He practically bounced over, putting on a gentlemanly air and offering her a seat and some tea. Macau and Wakaba groaned in frustration. Damn it, why is the guild master so fast? I should have been bolder. Mira, hands on her hips, scolded. Guildmaster, don't be so rude. She had never met Ulu before, but she'd heard Gray speak of his master and had been involved in the Tower of Paradise incident, so she recognized Ultier's mother. Ulu's resemblance to Ultier and the faint chill that radiated from her made the identification easy. The exhibitionist manner Ulu shared with Gray was an extra clue. Mr. Makarov, the product of an older generation of the magical world, of course knew far more than Mira did. Ah, that was more than 10 years ago. I'm just a newcomer who can't keep up with the times, Ulu said, scratching her head and smiling modestly. But there was no real humility. Her travels had exposed her to new magical theories and the impressive power of modern mages. If that level of magic makes you a newcomer, the newcomers in our guild will want to hide in a hole, Makarov joked. At that, someone who'd been suffering from Natsu and Gray's daily brawls felt a pang in the knee. Ulu, looking at the plain old man before her, spoke with a hint of respect. When I was a child, you were already famous in the magic world. Ha ha ha, that's all in the past, Makarov demurred, but he was clearly enjoying the flattery. He straightened his loose waistcoat and allowed a smug smile to creep across his face. Praise from a beauty in front of his guild members was doing wonders for his ego, until Ulu casually reminded everyone of some of his clearer indiscretions. I still remember when you destroyed half a town during a request, she said, and flattening that mountain range to the east, people talked about that for a long time. And the princess of a certain kingdom and you. Cough! Cough! Makarov tried to hide his embarrassment and quickly ushered Ulu to a nearby table to stop her. If she kept bringing up old scandals, his dignity would be gone for good. Mira, delighted by the gossip, chirped, "Seems the guildmaster was quite a hot-blooded youth. That explains why he's the head of Fairy Tale." Chess, who had wandered over, added a teasing jab. The others gathered around, eager for more explosive stories, especially ones about Makarov and some shadowy princess. Fairy Tale always loved an inside joke about their own brew of trouble. Makarov's face reddened. He glared at his guildmates with a stern look to restore order. Mira returned to the bar. "Miss Ulu, would you like a drink?" she asked. Ulu waved her hand casually. "Red wine, please." Mira bustled off to fetch wine and snacks. Ulu turned and, with gratitude, addressed Chess beside Makarov. "Little brother Chess, thank you for what you did back on Karuna Island. Without you, I might not have had the chance to return to this world, let alone reunite with Ultier." Chess smiled and deflected the praise. "You don't need to worry. If Gray's master is a friend of this guild, then you're among friends." Makarov patted Chess on the shoulder. He'd heard about the Karuna Island incident from Gray, and despite thinking Absolute Zero was not so easy to break, took his results at face value. Ulu propped her chin on her hand, regardful, and sighed theatrically. "If only I were young again, I'd repay you properly." "Little brother Chess, how about you take my Ultier? She's got a great figure," Makarov joked lecherously. A plate clattered as Mira set down the wine and snacks. She wore that practiced smile, but something about it was off. She'd overheard the earlier jibe and felt awkward. Ulu, perceptive as always, noticed the strange tension and let her gaze flick between Chess and Mira with an amused look. "So, Ulu, are you here to visit Gray?" Chess quickly changed the subject, ignoring the suggestive comment. Mira relaxed and began serving Kana and Macau. "I came for that, yes," Ulu answered, swirling the wine in her glass. "But judging from the state of things, that idiot probably isn't in the guild at the moment." Ulu swept her eyes over the still, unfinished guild hall. "If he were, he'd be rushing over for a hug right now." Chess restrained a grin. Gray might not be the huggy type, but the two old perverts sitting nearby certainly had the impulse. Makarov nodded. "Gray and Natsu are away on a holiday at a resort." "A vacation? What a lazy brat," Ulu complained, but her voice softened as she asked, "What about Gildarts? I don't see him either." Chess looked surprised. "You know Gildarts? I met him once when I was fighting the snowball monster more than 10 years ago," Ulu said, a reminiscent smile touching her lips. "He was very strong, though a bit indecent, tried to flirt with me under the pretense of forming a team. I refused." The memory was still vivid for her, even if a decade had passed. Makarov's face grew serious at the mention of the snowball monster. The threat it posed to the North Continent had left a strong impression. "Fate is strange," he murmured. But as for guild arts, he hasn't returned to his guild in 3 years. Ulu breathed easier at that. I'm glad to hear that. When I came, I wasn't sure how I'd deal with him. Makarov took the moment to extend an invitation. So, what do you plan to do? Would you consider joining Fairy Tale? Ulu declined politely. No, thank you. Joining a magician's guild is the best way to learn about modern magic, but it would feel odd to be in the same guild as my disciple. I prefer a free, easy life. Before she arrived in Magnolia, she'd visited Lamia Scale and met Guildmaster Obaba and Jura, a member of the 10 Wizard Saints, who had also invited her to join. Makarov's face fell a little, but he let it go. The doors of Fairy Tale are always open to you, he said. Ulu bowed. Thank you. I'm thinking of settling in Ishal. After so many years, I don't have many friends left in the north, and the overall level of magic there isn't very high. Plus Gray, Lion, and Ultir are all here, she added, looking into her glass. Oh right, I almost forgot, your daughter is on the council, Makarov admitted, rubbing his head. He even joked about having her live near his house, drawing a disapproving side glance from Mira. A trace of confusion and sorrow crossed Ulu's face when Ultir's name was mentioned. For some reason, Ultir seems to be avoiding me. She had gone to the council hall before visiting Fairy Tale and Lamia Scale, but the last few days she hadn't seen Ultir. The staff's answer had been blunt. Ultir didn't want to meet her. Ulu couldn't understand why. Chess, however, knew exactly why. Ultir carried so much guilt that she didn't have the courage to face the mother who loved her most. Makarov fell silent too. He didn't know the details between Ultir and Grimoire Heart, but having learned from Mira that Ultir had been involved in the Tower of Paradise, he realized this was a mother-daughter issue, not something outsiders should force into. The light atmosphere in the guild grew a little heavy. Seeing Ulu distressed, Chess's eyes lit up with an idea. Ulu, I've got a way to force Ultir to see you. What? How? Ulu straightened immediately. Chess casually popped a piece of crispy pork into his mouth, smiled, and raised a finger. Become the guild master of an officially recognized guild. The council manages guilds, and a guild master has to attend meetings. If Ulu became a guild master, Ultir, as a council member, would be required to meet her. Ulu frowned. Don't tease me. How would I find people to form a guild now? The plan was theoretically sound, but Ulu, who loved freedom and had only just been restored to the living world, had neither the connections nor the time to form a guild from scratch in Ishal. Mira, returning from the bar, sat beside Ches and smiled. You don't have to find anyone. There's already a guild ready for you. Makarov and Ches exchanged a look. The idea became clearer. Ches explained, there's a small guild on the verge of disbanding, Sabretooth. If you take it over, it shouldn't be too difficult. Sabretooth? Ulu frowned. The name rang a bell. She had watched the Fairy Tale Phantom Lord conflict closely because Gray had been involved. Phantom Lord had used Sabretooth as a pawn to declare war. I remember. The former guildmaster made some cowardly choices, but what about the members? I looked into it, Chess said. The former master made mistakes, but the members are good kids with real potential. Makarov leaned forward. You said joining a guild would help you catch up with modern magic. Becoming Sabretooth's guildmaster would be the fastest way. Having someone like Ulu, who trained Gray, take charge would be ideal for them, and for Minerva and the others too. Chess, who usually made suggestive remarks and acted flighty, had come up with a sensible, practical plan. Makarov, impressed, found his opinion of Chess improving. We can handle the council side. Those old men still owe us favors. I'll write a letter of recommendation. As for Sabretooth, Chess added, they've become a hot potato. They'll be eager for a powerful mage to step in. Ulu considered the proposal, and the idea of reuniting with her daughter and being placed at the center of modern magical society tugging at her. The plan was risky, but it promised a chance to face Ultir and to rediscover the evolving world of magic. Chapter 152, Sabretooth's New Guildmaster, Uru Mirkovich. This book's first release on the entire network. East of the Kingdom of Fiore, in the town where the Sabretooth Guild was located, a sudden explosion shattered the morning calm. Rubble flew, smoke choked the air, and the entrance to the Sabretooth Guild lay in ruin. Curious townsfolk gathered, watching as chaos unfolded. Move all the valuables out, don't leave even the food. barked a man in a black suit sitting cross-legged at the ruined entrance. He looked harsh as he directed his men to load everything onto the waiting magic cart. In a shadowed corner inside the guild, Minerva, Rogue, Sting, and a handful of other Sabretooth members watched with bloodshot eyes. Their faces and clothing were streaked with blood and dust. They were exhausted, their chests rising and falling from a recent brutal fight. After G-Man and the core members had been arrested by the council, the guild had lost whatever strength it once had. Those who could leave had already fled to other guilds. Only the weak, the sick, and the injured remained. To make matters worse, because of G-Man's crimes, neither the legitimate guilds nor the council paid any attention to Sabretooth's plight. No one would lift a finger to help this notorious little guild. That, the council knew, was exactly what would happen, lenient enough not to dissolve it, but abandoned if it couldn't support itself. "Miss, let's beat these bastards!" young Sting snapped, furious despite his wounds. The others looked equally unwilling to stand by. Most of those who stayed did so out of loyalty to Sabretooth. Minerva bowed her head and kept quiet, suppressing the urge to lash out. G-Man's brutal methods had been unforgivable, yet they had also hardened Minerva far beyond her years. Although she'd awakened powerful magic, the 18 demon fighting gods, she was still too young and too low in magic power to face the adult magicians outside. The same went for Rogue and Sting. Even with Dragon Slayer magic, they weren't a match for this group. A fight would be nothing but suicide. Blood welled at Minerva's tightly clenched fists. Unwilling tears gathered in her eyes. She swallowed them back and forced her voice low and calm. "Let them take what they like, as long as the guild remains." "The guild remains?" The man in the suit perked up and laughed without holding back. "Ha ha, kid, don't be naive. This stuff is just interest. If you can't pay, we'll just use this whole guild to settle the debt." "You bastard!" Sting snapped, and unable to contain himself, charged. The suit man barely moved. He raised a hand, and a scorching purple flame coiled out from a magic circle burning in his palm. It uncoiled like a giant snake, scorching the floor black as it leapt toward Sting with lethal force. Sting froze in terror as the purple flame rushed closer, reflected in the panic of his eyes. "Sting!" Minerva and Rogue shouted, but it was too late to cast most spells. "Ice Make! White Rose!" a clear voice called. A cold wind cut through the heat, and the purple flame was instantly frozen midair, transformed into an ice sculpture hanging between the attacker and Sting. Ice roses slowly unfurled across the sculpture's surface. This is... Sting blinked, stunned. A woman in a gray jacket stepped forward from the crowd. She glanced from the suit man to the ruined guild with an unhurried gaze. "I didn't expect that in this peaceful age someone would still stoop to attacking a legitimate guild." "You're from out of town, aren't you?" The suit man sneered. He recognized the ice make style and with a flash of unease, warned, "I advise you not to meddle in other people's affairs." "Sorry, but I can't stand by," the woman said simply. She smiled, stepping forward. She wouldn't turn a blind eye to bullying, even if she were merely passing through. The suit man's face darkened. "Are you sure?" He stood and stretched his jaw threateningly. The woman nodded. "All right then, pay me the 1 million J this guild owes, and my men and I will leave." 1 million? Uru Mirkovich blinked. She had come ready to fight, not to finance a guild. She tapped the inside of her cloak, then gave a pleading look into the crowd. "Collecting debts? I can deal with them, but I don't have that kind of money." "Of course you have to pay," the suit man said as if stating a fact. "We're law-abiding citizens." "You said a month ago," Minerva cut in. "We scraped together some money back then, but we're short. Then these men came with an offer." "Since it was a month ago, the interest counts," the suit man snapped. The conversation made Uru's expression harden. The bootlegging and usury were obvious. The suit man sensed the shift and clenched his fist, magic crackling behind his hand. "Woman, either pay or get lost." Uru hesitated. If she were on the northern continent, she'd have struck immediately. But in Fior, blind aggression could bring worse trouble to Sabretooth. She frowned, considering the consequences. Then another figure moved into view. "Isn't it only about money? How big a deal can it be?" Chess called, strolling up with the easy air of someone who belonged in the middle of trouble. Minerva's eyes widened. She rubbed her tear-streaked face in disbelief. "Chess? Here? Sting didn't get it at first, until Rogue nudged him and nodded toward Chess. The name meant everything to Minerva after the Irmo Relic Island incident. Chess was an idol she trusted. The suit man sneered at Chess, assuming he was another fool. Doesn't matter who you are. If you can't pay, don't waste my time. One of his men peered closer. Boss, haven't I seen him somewhere? Stop babbling, the suit man barked, then leaned on the negotiation. 1 million is a lot. Can you give me time? Chess smiled, raised a hand, and spread his fingers. 5 days? That's not impossible. The suit man grinned too. If Chess could pay, the man could keep collecting interest. If Chess couldn't, he'd own the guild. Suddenly, Chess began to count out loud as he peeled off his dark blue cloak. 5, 4, 3. The suit man's expression shifted to rage. He conjured a magic circle and rushed forward, intent on smashing this nuisance. But Chess went on, calmly removing his cloak and continuing the countdown. 2, 1. When the cloth fell away, the dark gold fairy tale emblem burned into Chess's right arm was revealed. Ah! Fairy tale! One of the suit man's lackeys made a strangled noise. Boss, I remember now. He's Chess, the S-class mage of fairy tale. Another man blurted, panic creeping into his voice. The suit man, once arrogant and domineering, went suddenly pale. He stumbled on his charge, and driven by momentum and fear, collapsed at Chess's feet and slid on his knees in a groveling bow. The sight of him begging stunned Chess into lowering his raised fist. Oh, so you're Chess. What an honor. I'm sorry. I spoke too loudly. Please forgive my rudeness. The man stammered, scrambling to be obsequious. Chess looked taken aback. Uru had indeed come to take over Sabretooth and would be staying in town. To keep a good impression and avoid trouble, Chess let it slide. How much did you say they owed? He asked. Million, no, 10,000, J, the man babbled. Stop lying. They borrowed 100,000 J a month ago, and it's only right to pay it back, Chess said, pulling a stack of banknotes from his card space and tossing them to the suit man. Now go. Yes, leaving right away. The man snatched the money, sweat beading on his face. Wait, do you want me to count it? No need. I trust you, Chess said, waving him off. The suit man scrambled to his feet and fled, followed by his men. Before they vanished, Chess pointed to the battered sign outside the guild. The nameplate had been removed, and declared, from now on, this guild is an ally of Fairy Tale. The crowd gasped. Everyone knew Fairy Tale and Sabretooth had clashed recently. The sudden change in status caused a stir. Chess had intended this. A public declaration would ward off many future headaches and help Uru get settled. It was a favor Makarov had quietly asked him to perform when Uru brought him into town. Got it, the suit man stammered as he hurried away. Uru grinned at Chess and gave him a thumbs up. Nice job bringing backup. You can praise me later. The 100,000 J still needs to be repaid, Chess reminded her. Oh, I was just joking about handing my daughter to you for help. Money talk is a little crude, Uru said, but she filed the debt and the favor away in her mind. She pushed through the ruined doorway and stood before Minerva and the others. You must be Minerva. I know roughly what happened here. Please, let me introduce myself properly, she added, crouching to meet Minerva's level. My name is Uru Merkovich. I'm an ice-make mage from the northern continent. I've got a little strength. Uru's voice was steady and warm. Then she spoke plainly. If it's all right, I'd like to be the guildmaster of this place. Sting reacted first. Be the guildmaster? How can you? We don't even know you. Minerva interrupted quietly but firmly. Her face, streaked with blood and dust, was resolute. Please help Sabretooth. She didn't hand the guild over lightly, but if the person was vouched for by Chess, she trusted him implicitly. After everything, Minerva looked to Chess with the same starry-eyed reverence a child gives a hero. Rogue tugged Sting's sleeve and pointed at Chess. Sting's anger softened into acceptance. If there are no objections, I'll take it as agreed, Uru asked. The Sabretooth members nodded, some even glinting with new hope. Not only had a capable mage offered to take the helm, but she had Fairy Tale's backing. Things could improve. Excellent, Uru said, a smile spreading across her face. As your new guildmaster, I'll issue the first order. She tossed off her extra jacket theatrically and declared, Special training begins. Clean up the grounds. Minerva, Sting, Rogue, 2 cats, all froze, stunned. Was cleanup really the first order? At least introduce yourselves first. And why was cleaning called special training? And why take off your clothes? Uru's idea of special training involved practical work. She began picking up debris from the courtyard while barking light orders. Chess watched from the side, twitching between amusement and exasperation. He had wondered how Uru would settle in. He'd never expected this. "Hey, you over there with the card space. Stop gawking and help," Uru called. "Don't be arrogant. I'm not part of this guild," one of the injured retorted. For this training, strip off useless things so your skin can touch the cold air and the magical factors. Learn to sense the secrets of magic from it. Uru instructed seriously. Eh? The idea of exposing skin to the cold made several of them freeze. "Hey, isn't that the ice make training method?" someone blurted. Chess just sighed. The job of integrating Uru into Sabretooth had already become far more interesting than he'd imagined. Chapter 153. Minerva asks for an autograph. New guild completed. Ulu's arrival injected life and energy into Sabretooth, which had felt like a stagnant pool. To anyone passing by, the sight of people taking off their coats and pants might have looked a little indecent, but after clearing away the trash from the scene, Ulu led Minerva and the others in a thorough cleanup. They worked until dusk before finishing. Bathed in the last light of the setting sun, Sabretooth, standing proudly in the center of town, looked completely renewed. Everything gleamed clean and orderly. In a way, the guild that had been on the verge of collapse was being reborn. "How's it feel? Have you noticed the effects of the special training?" Ulu sat casually on the guild's front desk, one hand on her hip. The minimalist swimsuit she wore highlighted her figure, but somehow it didn't make anyone's heart race the way it probably should have. We felt it." Minerva and the others replied weakly. They were exhausted and sprawled on the ground, but they'd had a taste of how capable their new guildmaster could be. She was gentle and kind most of the time, but when it came to training magic power, she was unexpectedly strict. "All right, that's enough for today. Go rest, take a shower, and then let Mr. Chess treat us to something delicious." Ulu clapped her hands decisively. Hey, Chess objected. "We just got to the guild. Shouldn't we take a moment to meet everyone in Sabretooth?" Ulu smiled. "After working that hard, what you need most is a hearty meal to replenish your energy." "Then why am I paying? You've been helping people all the way." Ulu scratched her head and said frankly, "I don't even have 1,000 J on me right now. Just put the bill on that brat Gray." Ulu had always been free-spirited and unpretentious. She considered Chess more of a partner than anything, so she didn't fuss over little things. Favors could always be returned later. Chess readily agreed, and the two happily reached a consensus, completely ignoring the wallet of a certain perverted man who was vacationing far away. Mr. Chess, I haven't had a chance to say this until now." Minerva approached, cheeks flushed, and bowed deeply. "Thank you so much for saving my life on Irmo Relic Island, and for showing me that my father's idea, 'the strong rule and the weak are discarded,' was wrong," she wanted to say, but kept it to herself. "You don't need to be so formal. I heard it all from the guild master," Chess said, reaching out to pat Minerva's head. "If you want to repay me, just work hard, become stronger, and make Sabretooth famous throughout Fior." Thinking of how this sweet, sensible girl turned into that cold, cruel version in the original story, Chess felt a pang of regret. Why hadn't he socked that bastard G-man a few more times back then? "Okay," Minerva snapped to attention, thrilled to be talking face-to-face with her idol. Her heart raced. Mr. Chess." Summoning her courage, she pulled a card and a pen from her tattered pocket. "Could I have your autograph?" The blank card had a dark gold vortex pattern on the back, the same type Chess used. Somehow, Minerva had gotten hold of this kind of merchandise. "No problem." Chess took the card and signed his name on the front. Minerva held the autographed card to her chest with both hands, overjoyed, and skipped over to show Rogue and Sting. Rogue and Sting looked green with envy, but their idols were Natsu and Gajeel, so they weren't about to go ask Chess for his signature. Lector and Frosh, the young Exceeds, craned their necks at the card. "Such an amazing man, his autograph is so messy," Lector complained. Frosh raised a paw. "Frosh thinks so too." Minerva glared at them. "You two can't even read. How do you know it's messy? It's clearly art." Ulu watched the whole exchange and sighed softly. Teenagers did get through awkward phases somehow. Guiding kids onto the right path and making them strong. That's your specialty, right? Chess teased. Even if you saved my life, you don't say things like that to a woman in her prime, Ulu said, holding up a finger with mock seriousness. Gray and Lion are living proof. That's true. Those two boys who used to cry and follow everyone around are magicians in their own right now. Ulu suddenly froze and slapped her forehead. Wait, by that math, I'm already super old? Chess looked at the oblivious Ulu and secretly wondered whether handing Sabretooth over to her had been entirely wise. Footsteps tapped at the guild entrance, and a shadow stretched long across the floor in the fading light. A toad-faced man in a council uniform walked in with a blank expression. As a council envoy, he carried himself with an air of importance, but when he saw Chess, the color drained from his face and his stomach did an uncomfortable flip. Chess! You're here too? He stammered. This was the same fellow Chess had beaten before, awkward, and now fate had brought them together again. The envoy looked embarrassed, then forced a polite smile. Yo, it's you. What brings you here? Chess guessed why the envoy had come and returned a genial smile. The toad-faced man took 2 careful steps back, trying to mask how nervous he felt when he saw Ulu beside Chess. Miss Ulu, right? Here are the documents and the Guildmaster's badge issued by the council. The esteemed counselors have taken Mr. Makarov's recommendation into consideration and approved you as the new Guildmaster of Sabretooth. I didn't expect the council to be so efficient, Ulu said as she accepted the folder. The envoy inwardly noted that of course they were efficient. The recommendation was from Makarov, and she was Ultir's daughter. Also, here's the application for eligibility for the 10 Wizard Saints assessment. If you're interested, you can fill it out and send it to council headquarters. The envoy added the form as though stating something routine. Compared to appointing a regular guildmaster, becoming one of the 10 Wizard Saints, the continent's elite, required much stricter scrutiny. Especially now, with dangerous individuals like Jalal having appeared. But Ulu was a special case. Makarov's recommendation and her connection to Ultir helped, and as a noted magician from the northern continent, her reputation and magic power easily met basic requirements. She only lacked contributions on the Ishal continent, a condition the council relaxed given the vacancies left by Jose and Jalal and the urgent need to fill them. 10 Wizard Saints? Me? Ulu blinked. She understood well the honor such a title carried. That's right, but this is just for candidate eligibility. Whether you become one of the 10 Wizard Saints depends on passing the assessment at year's end. The envoy finished and, clearly eager to leave with Chess present, hurried out. Wait, don't rush. Stay for tea before you go, Chess called after him. The envoy fled with a comical series of plopping sounds from his webbed feet. Ulu looked after him in amusement. Why does he seem so afraid of you? She asked. Chess laughed and briefly recounted their previous encounter. You actually hit a council envoy? Ulu raised a thumb in admiration. You really are something. But, Chess nodded toward the application form in Ulu's hand. From now on, we're rivals. You signed up for the 10 Wizard Saints too? Ulu was surprised. She planned to earn the title to raise Sabretooth's profile, to have an easier time collaborating with other saints and learning higher-level magic. A little more responsibility was a fair trade. But Chess, free-spirited Chess, didn't seem like someone who would be tied down by that kind of honor. Actually, I'm not interested at all. The old man did this for me in secret, Chess said with a sigh. Mr. Makarov nominated me to be the next fairy tale guildmaster. Ulu's eyes sparkled with understanding. That's a lot of trust and recognition. Ches looked troubled and stared at the sky. Being a guildmaster, that's just too much trouble. Minerva and the rest had overheard the conversation and were thrilled. Ulu, their eccentric new guildmaster, might be eligible for the 10 Wizard Saints exam. That title marked the strongest magicians on the continent. Guilds with that reputation were famous. Lamia Scale, Fairy Tale. Could Sabretooth grow to that level? Minerva's eyes shone with hope. Rogue and Sting imagined a future where they were known as the Sabertooth Twin Dragons across Fiore and pumped their fists. Even the older members, some of whom had been in the guild since before Gmon, wept with joy. After years of waiting, they finally saw the possibility of a true resurgence. With 10 Wizard Saints and an alliance with Fairy Tale, Powerful magicians would surely be drawn to them. Everyone returned to their lodgings, bathed, changed into clean clothes, and met again at the guild. Chess didn't hesitate to take them to a well-known local restaurant and indulge them with a feast. After all, young Master Gray was footing the bill. By the time they were done, the sky was fully dark and they'd missed the last train to Magnolia. Ches, not wanting to summon the city guard's winged dragon for a one-night trip, decided to stay at an inn nearby. Meanwhile, at the brightly lit council headquarters, Ultier stood at her desk in a fitted white dress, staring at the document that confirmed Ulu's appointment as Sabretooth's guildmaster. "I can't avoid it," she murmured, eyes dimming as she sighed. When she first received Makarov's recommendation, she'd been startled. She never expected to be dealing with this. Still, she had been the first to approve. Ultier, burdened with sin, had no face for her mother, but for the sake of work, she resolved she could meet her. "Jalal's condition is improving. I don't have much time left." She closed the file, rose, and walked toward the underground prison, continuing to guide Jalal's mind and will. She had made her decision. When Jalal recovered and the council's affairs were settled, she would have a final confrontation with the heart of evil. The prison corridor swallowed her silhouette as she disappeared into darkness. This was the path of atonement Ultier had chosen. The next morning, after saying goodbye to Ulu, Minerva, and the others, Chess returned to the newly finished Fairy Tale Guild in Magnolia. In a single day, the final touches were complete. Walls bearing the fairy tale emblem framed a magnificent guild house. Inside the gate was an open-air cafe filled with guild members arguing, an old fairy tale tradition. Across from the cafe, a small commercial street bustled. Marcus, with his short hair, was chatting with a delivery merchant. On Makarov's orders, he was running a general store there for a while, selling fairy tale merchandise, wool coins, water cups, guild member figures, and so on. "Yo, Chess, you're back!" Marcus waved with a mischievous smile. "Come look, a really interesting shipment just arrived." Chess knew what Marcus meant and walked over slowly. "These are the member figures the guild master specially ordered, all sculpted to the same scale," Marcus said. "And they have a manual clothes-bursting function." With theatrical flair, Marcus grabbed a Lucy figure from the pile for demonstration. He pressed a button, and accompanied by an embarrassing little sound effect, the figure's clothes popped off to reveal a swimsuit-clad body. Chess stared. Of course. In a world painted by a particular author, perks like these were everywhere. Marcus then pulled out Chess's figure. "By the way, there are 200 of your figures in this shipment. Mine too? With my reputation in Magnolia, are you sure they'll sell?" Chess took his figure and studied it, struck by how detailed the craftsmanship was. Even his battle scars had been replicated. Chess wondered which pervert had leaked the reference for that. "Yours will definitely sell. People have been asking since before the shop even opened," Marcus said with a grin. Chess smiled, quietly pleased. "They said they'll buy them and, when they're in a bad mood, take them out and beat them up." The smile froze on his face. "How much for all of them?" "What?" "For every single one. I want them all. Not a single one left. The merchandise is mainly for public sale. We can't just pack them all up. We need them to promote the new guild. Stop talking nonsense. I'll add money." "Okay." Marcus's eyes lit up at the word add money, and he agreed without hesitation. "Now, what was the promotion of the new guild compared to a quick profit?" "By the way, Chess, did you know we got 2 new members yesterday?" Marcus continued, loving the chance to gossip. "Juvia's already been recognized, and there's another one you wouldn't expect." "Gajeel, right?" Chess asked, glancing at a black magician girl figure for no reason in particular. "How did you know?" Marcus's eyes widened in disbelief. "A strong person's intuition," Chess said. "You'll understand when you reach S-class. Although that's a bit far for you." Marcus jabbed. Chess set the figure down and headed into the lively guild hall. Marcus muttered in frustration, thinking he would have liked to punch that annoying guy. Inside the guild, Mira stood behind the bar with the guild stamp in hand, ready to brand the fairy tale mark on the newly joined Juvia and Gajeel. Macau, Elfman, and the others crowded around, egging them on with lewd grins. "Hey, Gajeel, I think the place Chess and Natsu picked for you before was perfect. Get it tattooed on your butt," someone shouted. "Ha! That's brilliant." Stop hesitating, you bastard. Hurry up and take your pants off. Look, I still have the newspaper from back then. This location is perfect, okay? Someone added, waving the clipping like proof as the teasing continued. Chapter 154. Two Newcomers. The Harvest Festival is approaching. Because of Chess's involvement, Gajeel hadn't done any real harm to Levy's trio or to Lucy. So, compared with the bitter hatred and misunderstandings of the original timeline, Fairy Tail wasn't as strongly opposed to Gajeel joining. As long as he didn't harm their comrades or cross certain lines, destroying his old guild wasn't something they took personally. They trusted their guild master and were willing to give the Iron Dragon a chance to turn over a new leaf. That didn't mean he would be treated the same as Juvia, a girl who needed gentleness and warmth, though. Gajeel's stubborn, aggressive attitude practically begged for rough handling. "Shut up, you bastards!" Gajeel's face went red as he spun around and bared his jagged teeth. A newspaper picture was being waved in front of him. Everyone kept shaking it in his face, and his already thin pride shriveled. "Hey, Iron Dragon, look at this. I drew up the design for you." Lidus, who used drawing magic, grinned and held up his sketchpad. On a stretch of green grass, Gajeel's broad arm was exposed, the fairy tale emblem shining conspicuously in the sun. Lidus had even added sparkling effects at the key spots. The clean, well-defined outline made the guild's women gasp and look away shyly. The men clustered around with obvious interest, pointing and whispering about the huge tattoo design. "Who told you it was okay to draw something so invasive? That's private." Gajeel's mouth twitched. It felt almost like a public execution. He snatched the sketchpad and in a blur, ripped it to pieces. Thanks to Makarov, he had finally learned how important guild bonds were. He couldn't treat people the way he had in Phantom Lord anymore. "So, Gajeel, you ready?" Mira smiled and waved a tattoo stamp. "I've never tattooed iron before, but I'll do my best." "Why was this decided without asking me first? Could you at least ask the person involved?" Gajeel grumbled. "And what the hell is iron? I'm an Iron Dragon Slayer. I'm not an Iron Man." Mira's smile vanished the instant Gajeel glared at her. She covered her cheeks and burst into tears, sniffing, "I'm sorry. I just thought everyone's idea was interesting." Wah! The joking atmosphere died immediately. Faces turned grim, expressions sharp. Gajeel, who'd been furious a moment before, was now awkwardly trying to comfort Mira, his stiff attempts all wrong and embarrassing. When he joined the guild, Makarov hadn't warned him that the woman known as Demon Mira outside would be so fragile in private. Chess, watching from the edge of the commotion, smiled to himself and shook his head. Serves him right. "Chess, you're back?" A sweet voice sounded behind him. Chess turned to see a bright-faced woman in a top hat, short blue hair, and a fairy tale emblem pinned to her chest. "Juvia, so you've officially joined?" Chess raised a hand in greeting. "Yes. Thank you, Chess-sama, and everyone for your acceptance. Please take care of Juvia." Juvia beamed. The gloomy rain woman who used to mutter about drizzle was nearly unrecognizable. Joining Fairy Tail must work wonders for one's looks. "You were on vacation with Gray and the others, weren't you?" Chess asked. He didn't know how Juvia had gotten that precious ticket, but in the original story she'd shown up at the resort villa as a creepy stalker. "Yes. But I came back early when I heard about Gajeel." At the name, a shadow crossed Juvia's face. She'd wanted to stay close to Gray, but Gajeel was an ex-guildmate, and Makarov had announced that newcomers would be introduced. After Phantom Lord fell apart, the four elements had occasionally kept in touch with Gajeel. When he had nowhere else to go, Juvia had planned to ask to bring him in herself, but Makarov had found him first. "Good. Make sure you get along with Gray," Chess said meaningfully. "Yes, Juvia will make 30 babies with Gray." Juvia blurted proudly, blushing fiercely. Ches widened his eyes in thought, as expected of Fairy Tail's most obsessed woman. "Yo, Ches." Makarov, in casual sportswear, strolled over, hands clasped behind his back. "How did things go with Ulu and Sabretooth?" "There was a bit of trouble, but it's sorted now. When I returned, a few mages had applied to join." Ches glanced at the old man. "By the way, Guildmaster, you were the one who let Ulu take the 10 Wizard Saints assessment, right?" "It was a spur-of-the-moment thing." Makarov waved it off, then frowned. "I did hesitate. I suppose it gives us a powerful rival, not ideal for Fairy Tail. You'll train hard, won't you? For the Guild's glory." Chess met Makarov's gaze and, as if to underline the point, silently produced a brainwashing magic card. Ha! I don't use card magic. Makarov chuckled, understanding the hint but refusing to admit anything. He waved it off and changed the subject. Anyway, I'm going to try out the new pool out back. He looked left and right to ensure Mira, who was still idly stamping the faux tattoo on Gajeel, hadn't overheard, then leaned close to Chess and murmured conspiratorially, "There's a very interesting device at the bottom of the pool. I'll take you to try it after the inspection." He deliberately dropped his voice low enough that even Juvia, standing nearby, couldn't hear the details. Chess watched the old man race off toward the outdoor pool with childlike glee, thinking, "Old pervert." The special device didn't take much guessing. It was the periscope from the original story. Chess remembered how Natsu, Gray, and Gajeel had once been invited to an observation room in the basement to cough, admire the girls in swimsuits, only to be confronted by Makarov's outrageously embarrassing body instead. "Welcome back, Chess." A faint fragrance drew him out of his thoughts. Mira, having finished stamping, smiled and asked, "Didn't Black Magician Girl come with you?" Gajeel had chosen the same place as in the old timeline to get inked, the fairy tale emblem now proudly printed on his prominent left biceps. "That guy's still undertaking Black Magician's special training for a few more days," Chess replied. That's a shame," Mira said with a disappointed sigh. "By the way, the S-Class missions are open again, right?" Chess pointed to the second floor, where Kana, slightly tipsy, leaned over the railing in a provocative pose. She was undeniably attractive, but the old men around the guild seemed completely uninterested in anything but Mira's performance and the newcomers. Yes, and to make communication easier, the guild masters lifted the rule that only S-Class mages can go to the second floor. Mira pressed a finger to her cheek. But S-Class and above requests still need an S-Class mage to accompany the team. "I see," Chess nodded. "There are a few promising new requests coming in. Want to take a look?" Mira knew Chess had been idle long enough to grow mold. "Let's wait a bit. The new house should be finished in a couple of days, and the Harvest Festival is coming up soon." Chess had no intention of taking off. S-Class jobs could be quick, but they could also spiral into long investigations, like that 10-year quest. He didn't want to risk being away and miss giving Laxus a good thrashing during the Harvest Festival. "That's true. After finishing up guild business, I'll go with you to see the new house." Mira's eyes sparkled with anticipation. Chess readily agreed, and she hurried off to tackle the tasks tied to completing the new guild house. After chatting with Juvia a little more, Chess wandered the new building. Afternoon came quickly. A commotion at the entrance told everyone exactly who had returned. The strongest team, back from vacation. Wow, they finished renovating and equipping the guild in just 2 days? Lucy stood at the entrance and peered around the bright, newly rebuilt hall in disbelief. "Aye," Happy echoed. "It's unexpected," Urza said, supporting her chin as she studied the layout. "Even the surrounding shops are new." Gray toyed with a Lucy figurine he'd gotten as a freebie from Marcus after profiting off Chess. He pressed a button with a smirk. The toy's clothes popped open with a practiced mechanical sound. "Why would you bring that broken thing here?" Lucy snatched it back. "This place feels familiar but so strange," Natsu frowned, unconvinced. It lacked the old guild's character. Makarov shuffled over, Juvia at his side. "Did you have fun, you brats?" he asked, smiling. At that, the strongest team froze. If you didn't count the damage Natsu and Gray had caused each other, their vacation had been surprisingly uneventful. "Ha! What an exciting vacation," Makarov guessed from their stiff faces. "Come over, I'll introduce the newcomers." Natsu burst from his immobility and sprinted forward. "Hey, old man, who's that besides Juvia?" Urza and the others followed his lead. Makarov's gesture led their gaze to a corner of the guild. There sat Gajeel alone, fiddling with a chunk of iron with his teeth. "What? Him?" Natsu shouted in disbelief. Lucy, Happy, and Gray were stunned. Urza frowned. Though Gajeel and Juvia were both former Phantom Lord mages, Gajeel's destruction of that guild and his attempted attack on Shadowgear made him a far more dangerous presence than Juvia. He was potentially a ticking bomb. "But he didn't do those things to our comrades," someone muttered. That was the difference here. Their tolerance was greater than in the original timeline because Gajeel hadn't personally harmed their friends. Got a problem, Fire Dragon? Gajeel, always prickly with Natsu, stopped chewing and glared. If I wanted a stable job, I wouldn't bother being in the same guild as you. You want to fight, you bastard? Natsu ripped up his sleeves and went for it, but Gajeel, newly accepted, knew he had to swallow his pride. He pursed his lips and sat back down, refusing to let the situation escalate. Just then, with a whoosh, the guild's lights went out. A single spotlight bathed the stage. The curtain opened and Mira, clutching a guitar, sat center stage. To welcome back the strongest team and celebrate the new guild, I'll sing a song for everyone, Mira called brightly. She smiled at Natsu and the others, adjusted her guitar, and tested the sound into a small, winged, chick-shaped microphone floating before her. Oh, Mira's going to sing? Awesome, the old men hollered. That outfit suits you, Mira-chan. The old perverts erupted in cheers, forgetting even the tension between Gajeel and Natsu. Natsu could do nothing but slump back down beside Lucy and the others. The guild fell into a quiet hush. Mira plucked the strings, gently caressing, where your shape cannot be seen. Shadows hang low. Today I am alone as well. Her clear, pleasant voice filled the hall. For once, the troublemakers were uncharacteristically subdued, listening in silence. Chess wasn't among the audience. When Mira had suggested performing, a plan had sparked in his mind. Give the guild a surprise with exclusive background music, a rehearsal for the Harvest Festival's magical parade. Behind the stage, he was tuning instruments with Black Magician Girl and some card monsters he had summoned, making sure everything for the show would be perfect. Chapter 155, Laxus Appears, Civil War is Coming. After finishing the song, Mira stood and bowed lightly to the crowd. A cheer erupted instantly. Glow sticks, no one knew where they'd come from, waved like a sea as everyone clamored for an encore. Lucy and the others were still basking in Mira's gentle, beautiful voice when the dim lights of the guild flickered. The curtain opened and Gajeel, wearing a white suit, swaggered onto the stage. He crossed his legs, utterly arrogant. You're lucky, he sneered. This one's mine. Graffiti rave. Before the audience could react, Gajeel jumped into a wild electric guitar intro and began to sing. Colorful, colorful. This melody of love is forged from hard steel metal. Oh yeah. The harsh, rigid rhythm and his gravelly shout assaulted the hall. If Mira's song had been a balm for the soul, Gajeel's was the howl of a demon from the deepest pit, an unpleasant, ear-splitting cry. That's awful. It's so annoying. Get off the stage, you bastard. Who wants to hear this crap? You think a white suit and sunglasses make you cool? Even a dog barking sounds better. Get down! Get down! The crowd, ears smarting, booed and hurled rotten eggs, stinky socks, and slippers at him. A few cheered. Juvia genuinely supported him, but most were just enjoying the chaos. Gajeel, with all the thick-skinned confidence of someone born to antagonize, reveled in it and sang wilder. Even buzzing with dust, Lucy, the professional, murmured, "Does he actually have musical talent? Throwing a mop means they want you to get off stage, right?" Natsu, sitting nearby, covered his ears and shouted, "Shut up! I've never heard anything this terrible." Dong! Natsu's insult cut off mid-sentence as an electric guitar flew from the stage and smacked him in the face. Wah! Gajeel's mouth crammed with improvised guitar keys. He glared. Natsu sprang up, furious, and lunged to drag Gajeel off the stage. Gajeel had the same idea. The two old rivals leapt and kicked at each other like fireworks. You want to fight, bastard? I'm running a graffiti rave. What would a single-celled idiot know? You got better barking than the old junkman in the market. Predictably, Natsu and Gajeel started fighting. Gray set down his wine, standing to scold, and in the motion accidentally knocked over the plate beside him. Plop! The strawberry cake slid off and hit the floor. Urza, who had been eyeing the cake, reached out trembling for the salvageable half, only to have a wooden clog come down and smash it into crumbs. Stop fighting! Elfman stepped forward and didn't notice the force about to hit him. Urza, now a tempest, blasted him 10 meters away. That punch sent a ripple through the crowd. Hot-tempered fairy tale members who'd had enough of random destruction sprang into action. Magic circles flashed and counters were cast. Boom, bang, pots, pans, chairs, everything turned into flying debris. The rare relaxing concert dissolved into an all-out brawl as the hall became a war zone. completely unsurprising development, someone muttered. Lucy and Happy crouched behind the bar, knees hugged tight, trying to stay out of the fray. Though a newbie in guild chaos at first, Lucy was no stranger to this now. Laughter and shouts blended into the cacophony. "Ha ha! This is lively. Let me add some momentum." Lucy looked up to see Chess on stage with the black magician girl and the elf swordsman, a full rock set behind them. "Wait, Chess, you can't start that now. This will only make things worse." Lucy remembered the last time Chess had played. The music swelled courage and madness in equal measure. If the battle-hungry members heard it, it could set them off worse than a keg of gunpowder. "Don't worry, Lucy. With the guildmaster here, it won't go too far," Happy whispered. Lucy nodded, but Happy's voice sounded off. She glanced and saw the traitorous cat had crept away to the window, looking ready to bolt. Lucy leapt from her cover and wrapped herself around Happy. "If I die, you're coming with me," she hissed. Chess and his card monsters began drumming the prelude, boom, 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 and the sound washed through the guild like a storm. The fighting paused as the rhythm hit everyone's nerves. The music woke something odd and powerful, a roar of energy that made people's blood boil and power surge. "My magic power, it's expanding to the max." This feeling, is this the power of music? As expected of Chess, his tunes are brutal. "You lot, come at me together. I'll take 10. Even Makarov, who'd been trying to calm things, rose on his feet and shouted, Oh, I'm fired up." "No, Guildmaster, calm down," Lucy cried, terrified. "Ara, suddenly I feel like fighting. Why is Mira turning into Satan's soul now? Take this, Chess, I'm terrifyingly strong." "Natsu, stop, Chess, not the—" Lucy's panic doubled. If she couldn't stop Natsu, everything would become full-on mayhem. Natsu, hearing Lucy, jumped to his feet. "Aye!" Happy's ears barely showed above the commotion. The classic fairy tale background music roared on as everybody re-engaged in the brawl. Explosions of magic echoed down the street. The new guild building trembled by the lake. People in Magnolia stopped to stare, whispering about Fairy Tale's latest antics. They didn't notice the blonde man in a coat with spiked headphones and a dark expression standing behind them. Makarov was the first to regain control. Sensing Chess's music had pushed things too far, he stomped down the chaos, and the new guild avoided being wrecked minutes after completion. Still, the members were high on the music's afterglow and begged Chess for an encore, promising to behave. Natsu, sprawled with a grin after being knocked down, said happily, "That's the guild vibe." Chess declined to indulge them. He put the card monsters back in his deck and walked off stage. No one dared force him to play again. Too many had learned what happened if you crossed him. Black Magician Girl stayed behind and clasped Mira's arm, asking to be shown around the new guild. Mira smiled and happily agreed. The two left the hall hand in hand. "Hey, Gray, did you know your teacher Ulu stopped by the guild yesterday?" Chess sat opposite Gray. "Ulu? She came back?" Gray looked surprised. He hadn't expected it so soon. Word traveled fast. Lucy, Urza, Happy, and Natsu gathered around, eager to hear more. Urza, having missed the Deliora incident, was especially curious about the woman Gray mentioned. Chess explained the previous day's events briefly. "What? Ulu's now the guildmaster of Sabretooth?" Gray's eyes widened. "Sabretooth? That name is familiar. Where have I heard it?" Natsu tilted his head, clueless. He'd forgotten the whole Sabretooth controversy. "It's the guild that colluded with Phantom Lord and tried to attack us." Lucy deadpanned at his forgetfulness. "Oh, that muscular guy the guildmaster knocked down with one punch." Natsu slapped his knee in sudden understanding. "You really have bad manners remembering people," Lucy scolded. "According to the council's inquiry, that was G-Man's personal doing. Even Sabretooth's members didn't know about it," Urza added, resting her chin on her hand. "If Chess and the guildmaster both recommend it, it must be a decent place." "Then it's decided. We'll go check it out." Natsu jumped up, as impulsive as ever. "Don't be so hasty. Ulu just took over Sabretooth. Going there now would be a bother," Gray said calmly. He wanted to see Ulu but boxed Natsu's enthusiasm. "Pervert ice boy, what did you say?" Natsu spun, glaring. "I said you're an idiot." Gray wasn't bothered. The two pressed foreheads in another instant standoff, giving Chess the urge to check if their skulls contained opposing magnets. "Sit down. Haven't you caused enough trouble today?" Urza said, taking a sip of tea. Immediately, Natsu and Gray straightened, sitting properly like scolded schoolboys. But Urza, you threw down with Mira too, Happy whispered. Urza's eyes flared. Aye, Natsu, Gray, that was too much. Happy switched targets. Lucy pounced on the moment to complain about the betrayal. While the banter flew, Chess swiped a fried chicken leg and licked his fingers, nonchalant. Before that, Gray, settle the bill for Ulu treating everyone to dinner for me. Huh? Why should I pay? Gray blinked. Because she said that when you were little, you ran to the neighbor's house with your bare butt. Chess grinned. How much? I'll pay, Gray blurted, blushing. He didn't want Natsu to ever find out that particular anecdote. Under the table, Juvia twisted anxiously, desperate to hear Chess continue. Mr. Ches, tell me, she wanted to know. She was dying to hear Gray's childhood story. While the few joked and teased each other, Gajeel, trailed by Jet and Troy, followed Shadowgear out to Magnolia Park. Chapter 156, I Will Expel Laxus from the Guild. When Gajeel stumbled back into the guild, he was a wreck. Clothes shredded, skin laced with burns and bruises. He swayed as he walked, like he might collapse at any second. Conversations died down as the others noticed, but no one stepped forward. They had accepted him into Fairy Tale, but none of them had stopped treating him like a dangerous outsider. A cautious distance remained. Only Juvia, who had once belonged to Phantom Lord, moved. She crawled out from under a table and blocked his path, face full of worry. What happened? Gajeel, how did you get like this just from going out? She demanded. She vividly remembered that Mr. Chess hadn't hit him that hard during the commotion. Something else had gone terribly wrong. Gajeel pried his eyelids open and took heavy steps to get past her. His voice was hoarse. I need to work. Under everyone's gaze, he pushed through to the request board, shoved aside the NPC knob in front of him, scanned the list, and tore off a mission slip. Then he went to Mira at the bar to register it. I'll take this. Mira frowned as she examined the slip. You're in no condition for a mission. You should get treated first. Just a scratch, Gajeel muttered, all the arrogance and swagger from half an hour earlier gone. No, Guildmaster said I could. I'm a member now. I can't just... Mira cut him off with a shake of her head. She'd been the one to stamp the Fairy Tale emblem on his arm and couldn't ignore how battered he looked. Besides, the job he'd taken, a basic magic lecture, was perfectly safe and really more Lucy's speed. Gajeel tucked the slip away and turned toward the guild exit. Informing Mira was as far as he intended to go. Mira started forward to stop him, but Chess, who had been watching, spoke up before she could. Let the fool go, Mira. He had seen Gajeel leave with Shadowgear and knew, from the lightning scorch marks on Gajeel's body, what had happened. Laxus. Gajeel gave Chess a grateful look and, despite Juvia's pleading, left the guild. Mira's worry didn't lessen as his figure receded. Natsu, Lucy, and the others were baffled. How could the Iron Dragon, who'd been full of life, be reduced to this in a matter of minutes? A small, guilty voice broke the silence. It's our fault. Levy stepped forward with Jet and Troy. Troy and I went to find him to settle the old grudges about that sneak attack and the time the guild was broken. We thought we could handle it. Jet's expression went solemn. At first, we thought a fight would be fine. But in the middle of it... Laxus showed up, Levy finished. He accused the guildmaster of accepting anyone and everyone, saying the guild's name was being shamed, then attacked Gajeel. Everyone understood in an instant. He ran into Laxus, Natsu said, more resigned than surprised. After all, Laxus's power was infamous. Gray scowled. Even if Gajeel's strong, Laxus went too far. Troy's face was complicated as he remembered. Gajeel didn't fight back. He really wanted to join our guild, so he held back. Levy added, voice barely a whisper. I tried to calm things down, but Laxus just unleashed lightning. Jet clenched his fists. Gajeel used his own body to take the lightning. That admission shifted the mood. Gajeel had taken the hit to protect Livy. The room's irritation hardened into anger. Laxus is getting worse, Mira said, unable to keep the scolding out of her voice. Targeting Gajeel might be one thing. He was a former enemy, but Levy was one of them, practically family. I'll go find him, Urza said, setting down the slice of strawberry cake she'd been holding. Dark storm clouds gathered behind her calm eyes. I'll go too, Mira said, glancing at Chess and then straightening. Part of her wanted to teach Laxus a lesson. Part of her feared what might happen if Urza confronted such a dangerous man alone. With Laxus's power and his status as the guildmaster's grandson, it could turn deadly. We'll go as well, Natsu and Gray said in unison, indignant. Wait, shouldn't we tell the guildmaster first? Lucy blurted, panic rising. She didn't have the history and understanding that Natsu and the others did. Makarov's attempts to reason with Laxus had been endless. Lucy feared rushing in would only make things worse. Mira and Urza had already started toward the door. Lucy hesitated, torn. Chess sat across from Black Magician Girl, oddly calm. She watched him lift his teacup, sip, and say, composedly, "He has no intention of coming back here. You won't find him if you run after him now." Mira and Urza froze. Natsu spun around, face red. "Even if I have to drag him out by the ears, I'll find that bastard." "And then what? Do you think you can beat Laxus?" Chess asked quietly. The bravado faltered. "But we have Mira and Urza." Gray tried to rally. "We're more than a couple of people." Chess set his teacup down and let golden magic power radiate, not a threat, but a hard-to-have heavy reality. Even if Mira and Urza could physically restrain a rampaging Laxus, their natures would prevent them from striking him down. They would injure the surroundings and then try to reason. Laxus, in his current state, would only become more unhinged. Mira and Urza's resolve sagged. The guild hall fell into a stunned silence until Chess's voice cut through low and cold. "This is the last warning. If Laxus continues like this, I will expel him from the guild on behalf of the guild master." For many, that was an impossible sentence. Chess himself knew how much Laxus' rebellion would later lead to growth. But in the moment, with Levi hurt and Gajeel burned, the idea of expulsion was the only way to prevent more bloodshed. Mira gripped her dress. She hadn't wanted a fight between guildmates. Urza and the others were equally shaken. Even Natsu, who'd regarded Laxus as no more than a terrible comrade before, realized how serious this was. At dusk, the river by Magnolia reflected the sun's last light. Chess, accompanied by Mira and Black Magician Girl, walked down an empty street toward his new house. It needed only minor finishing touches and was basically ready to move into. An old boatman waved them off, warning Mira and the Black Magician Girl to be careful around that dangerous man. He didn't recognize them, but let his words hang in the air. Mira found him annoyingly oblivious. "Oh, my master, is this our new home?" Black Magician Girl squealed when they reached the 3-story house with a backyard and terrace. She hadn't been allowed out much recently and was delighted. The exterior's gray and white palette pleased her. Mira's eyes sparkled. "Let's go inside." Chess unlocked the specially reinforced door, reinforced for the occasional idiot who liked to kick it in, and they entered. Instead of a sharp chemical smell, the air held a faint, pleasant fragrance from the magician incense pouches purifying the space. The living room opened up, spacious, bright, and furnished in a modern style not typical of Magnolia. Chess, who'd worked in construction, had incorporated practical magical conveniences into Mira's design. Mira toured the place like a proud hostess, explaining every detail to the Black Magician Girl. Chess, not one for fuss, made the tea and sat on the mahogany sofa. Before he could take a sip, Lucy's head popped through the slightly open front door, and she slipped inside, eyes wide. "So beautiful. Chess, is this your new house?" She'd been watching the building progress from across the street and had wanted to see it for herself. A blue cat flew in, followed by a curious Natsu, a shirtless Gray, and an armored Urza. They wandered through the house as if it were their own, tapping and poking in every corner. "Where's the fireplace? What kind of house doesn't have a fireplace?" Natsu demanded. No fireplace meant no fire buffet, and that was unacceptable. "There's floor heating, Natsu," Mira said from the stairs. "Shh, floor heat isn't tasty," Natsu muttered, oblivious to how odd that sounded. Happy found the refrigerator and peered inside, thrilled. Urza, blushing at a sudden wild thought, froze for a beat before Mira explained, "Chess asked me to design this place. I'm just checking the workers' work." Gray, lounging, had already discovered the bathtub and was lying in it with the bathroom door open. "How did you find the bathroom so fast?" Lucy demanded, scandalized. "This interior is nice, but it feels like something's missing," Urza said, resting her chin on her hand. "We should put a custom statue in the living room." Chess stared. He had no idea that S-class female mages had such hobbies. Mira's roof full of chibi statues still haunted his memory. He took another sip of his tea and thought privately to himself that next time, some of these suggestions should never be voiced aloud. Chapter 157, Chess's Plan, His Special Role in the Civil War. After a little commotion, everyone settled into the living room. The conversation naturally revolved around Lax's behavior earlier that day. As expected, that guy Laxus is still insufferable. Natsu snapped, eyes flashing with the kind of hot fury that made flames seem to leap from his sockets as he remembered Gajil's battered state and Livy's account. Don't forget, Natsu, remember the time you challenged Laxus and tried to eat his lightning? You were bedridden for days after that, Happy said, pouring cold water on his friend. Even though it had been a year, Happy still remembered it vividly and had been terrified at the time. Wait, Natsu only eats fire, right? Why would he eat lightning? Lucy asked, taking the black tea Chess handed her with both hands. Because he couldn't beat him. Happy spread his hands helplessly and sighed. Natsu just likes to act tough. I was a kid back then. Things are different now. Natsu protested, fists clenched, trying to look defiant. You have a very casual relationship with time, Lucy said, covering her forehead. Mirajane smiled and set her hands on her burgundy dress. Speaking of which, I remember when Chess first came to the guild. Laxus beat him pretty badly, too. Ha ha! I almost forgot about Chess's hair standing on end after being electrocuted. Gray laughed at the memory, then slumped as if deflated. Damn, I used to be able to pick on Chess back then. When did the gap get so big? I was the one who bandaged Chess's wounds at the time, Urza said with a knowing smile. He refused treatment. He was too stubborn. She looked at him now with respect. Without realizing it, Chess had grown from someone anyone could tease into someone even she looked up to. She was glad such a strong, caring man was a comrade she could trust, unlike Laxus, who treated a companion's weakness like a sin. The more you struggle, the more chances you have to survive. If our master had to rely only on my bandaging, he'd be in trouble, Black Magician Girl said, covering her mouth as she chuckled. Chess, nearby, took a sip of tea and nodded silently. That battle with Urza had been the most dangerous crisis he'd faced since transmigrating. Against Ignia, he'd had a safety net, but with Urza, he'd been truly unarmed. How is that possible? I practiced my bandages specifically, Urza exclaimed in disbelief. Haha, I didn't expect Chess to have such a dark history. Lucy laughed, picturing the younger Chess. She'd joined late and had already gotten used to Chess as a super strong monster. She'd never imagined he'd once been vulnerable. But you have to admit, Laxus is crazy strong, Mirajane added. Yeah, among S-class mages, Laxus has always been at the forefront. Of course, Gildarts doesn't count, Happy chimed in. Gildarts? Is he the legendary strongest you mentioned earlier? Lucy asked cautiously, remembering the hints of even greater power. Maybe, Urza let the idea hang. Nowadays, though, Chess is incredibly strong. Urza, Mirajane, Mistigan, everyone's powerful. Happy jumped onto the coffee table, peering around. Hey, who would win in a guild strongest competition? Me? Really? Mirajane blinked, surprised. Compared to them, I'm outclassed, Urza said modestly. Natsu Gray, why didn't you count us? The brothers said in unison, both indignant but ignored. We're all guildmates. There's no need to rank ourselves, Lucy said solemnly. Oh, speaking of which, the Harvest Festival in Magnolia is next week. The guild's putting on the Miss Fairy Beauty Contest. Mirajane nodded. I heard the first place prize is $1 million, she said. Usually the prize was 500,000, split between Magnolia and the guild. This year, with sponsorship from the wealthy Hartfilia family, it had doubled. $1 million? Lucy's eyes lit up. The moment she'd said they shouldn't rank strengths, the money had clearly changed her tune. Mirajane, sign me up. All right, go register. Mirajane agreed with a smile that had an unreadable tilt. I'll enter too, Mirajane added. $1 million would cover repairs and rent, Urza said, clenching her fist, clearly eager to win. I missed last year. This year I'll charm all of Magnolia. Black Magician Girl squealed, full of energy. She, too, could be counted as a fairy tale member in spirit. Lucy's fighting spirit surged, but then she glanced at the competition in her head. A cover girl who topped the magical weekly charts, the heroic fairy queen, and the exuberant cute prodigy. Panic flitted across her face. How could she possibly win? Still, the $1 million was too tempting, a year's rent and then some. She started to console herself. Mirajane and Urza were older, and she, the younger and cuter one, had the edge. Black Magician Girl, being an immortal mystery, could be banked on to take second even if she lost. She steeled herself and declared, "Bring it on, I won't lose to you." "Hey Natsu, I see the dark side of humanity again. You said you didn't want to rank people." Happy snipped, loud enough to echo around the living room. Lucy exposed, forced a smile and broke into a practiced sweet grin. "Want to come to my place later? I'll treat you to fish. And Chess, Natsu, Gray, you three come too." Mirajane and the others got a firm, cold shoulder. "We don't accept bribes," Happy protested, surprising everyone by resisting. "I'd go even without the fish," Natsu said, as if it were obvious. "Sorry, your place is too rundown. I'll stay at Chess's tonight," Gray said, reclining on the leather sofa. "It's okay, Lucy. Even if you don't win, at least you won't be homeless," Chess said with an encouraging smile. 4 jabs landed all at once, each hitting Lucy's sorest spots. Her confident facade crumpled. She slumped into the corner of the living room, mood gray and emo. Laughter broke out around her. As night fell over Magnolia, Lucy, Mirajane, and the others filed out one by one. Only Chess and Black Magician Girl remained in the brightly lit room. She didn't want to return to the card space just yet. She sprawled on the sofa with a bag of potato chips, tossing them into her mouth as she asked, "By the way, Master, what are you going to do about Laxus?" From Chess's perspective, she'd seen Laxus's true heart. In time, he could become a loyal comrade. "Who do you think is stronger, me or Laxus?" Chess asked with a small smile. At first, it was hard to tell, but now, whether in raw magic power or in fighting style, he's no match for you, Black Magician Girl answered without thinking. Though she sometimes seemed airheaded, she was an incredibly gifted mage with sharp insight. "Coincidentally, I think so too," Chess said, nodding as he began to wash the tea set. He had, in a way, broken the trope that a soft-hearted protagonist is weak. Laxus might be more reckless and powerful right now, but he hadn't yet realized what he truly wanted to protect: his guild and friends. He was still just a rebellious kid who hadn't undergone the emotional change needed to wield his strength responsibility. Chess judged that Laxus, fighting full out, might be on a level comparable to Jelal. With Chess's own magic power further amplified by 2 new cards, he could handle Laxus. The only thing Laxus still had that could decisively shift a fight was Fairy Law, one of Fairy Tail's 3 great magics. But wielded by the proud tsundere Laxus, it was effectively a giant flare, devastating in power but useless as a binding or cooperative force among companions. Given all that, Chess could see many possibilities to manipulate once the Civil War began. "So, what are you going to do? Just beat Laxus up?" Black Magician Girl blinked with wide eyes, eager to see Laxus broken. "If I beat him outright, the Civil War won't happen," Chess said softly. When Chess used his music magic earlier, he felt its amplification effect on his guildmates. Fairy Tail had never been about a single person's power. It was about everyone improving together. Even with his cheating knowledge and advantages, Chess believed in that collective spirit. Simply shouting, "We are Fairy Tail," and killing the enemy felt too idealistic. So Chess had a plan for the Civil War Laxus was igniting. Let everyone fight with everything they had for the people they cared about most, gather combat data from each member, and, just like how Lucy had found ways to grow, have Black Magician Girl design personalized upgrade plans for each of them. In short, use the conflict as a crucible to strengthen everyone. "Wow, you can do that?" Black Magician Girl jumped up, excited. "That's brilliant, Master. It's so much better than just punching Laxus." Aside from finding the plan interesting, she was secretly thrilled because if things got busy, her master would be too consumed to supervise her, and she liked that. On the cliffs outside Magnolia, bathed in moonlight, Laxus stood in the cold wind, staring down at the town. His gaze rested on the colorfully lit Fairy Tail Guild Hall. "Just wait, old man," he muttered to himself. "After this war, I'll make Fairy Tail into the strongest guild in the world. Weak and naive people will be kicked out." He'd already contacted his personal guard, the Thunder God tribe, and set a plot in motion to force Makarov's hand. The next day, Chess officially moved into his new home and hosted a lively party, inviting many guild members. With the Harvest Festival approaching, he stayed in Magnolia and resumed daily training in the card space, preparing thoroughly for the coming Civil War. He still wandered the guild in his free time, chatting with Mirajane, using Natsu as a training partner, or teasing Lucy as usual. Life felt full. One by one, fairy tale members who had been training outside returned to town, getting ready for the festival. A week passed quietly, and soon it was the day of Magnolia's annual harvest festival. Chapter 158, Beauty Contest, Makarov's Absolute Trust. Magnolia was in full swing that early morning, streets crowded with visitors from towns near and far. The harvest festival had turned the town into a second new year, but more than the stalls and fireworks, it was the fairy tale beauty contest that had drawn the biggest crowd, especially the stream of lecherous men who'd traveled miles to see their favorites from the weekly magazine, Mira and the Black Magician Girl. On Fairy Tale's third-floor terrace, Chess and Guildmaster Makarov leaned on the railing, watching the throng below. "Guildmaster," Chess said, "I saw Freed and the others come back a couple of days ago, and Laxus has been off. I think he's about to do something." Chess braced himself on the rail and spoke quietly. "I just have a feeling that guy's planning a big move." Makarov, at 88, had long had heart trouble. In the original timeline, it was Laxus's betrayal during the civil unrest that had pushed him to the brink. Even now, the memory brought a flush of worry. From Mira, he'd heard about Laxus attacking Levy and badly injuring Gajil. As their grandfather, Makarov hated to believe the worst about his grandson, but Chess's warning deepened the unease. The Thunder God tribe showing up now, during the harvest festival when everyone's back. Makarov muttered, his expression clouded. "If he tries to hurt his comrades again, I'll have no choice but to expel him." The old man's hand tightened into a fist at his side. "Just like Ivan," he added, voice faltering. At the mention of his son, pain crossed Makarov's usually cheerful face. No father or grandfather wanted to cast out family if it could be avoided. Chess put a hand on his shoulder. "If anything unexpected happens, don't hesitate. Do whatever you have to. I trust your judgment," Makarov said, forcing a small smile. "This is a special privilege for a guildmaster candidate, you know." Chess couldn't help but glance down at the smiling, oddly forced expression. Fathers ran, grandsons were rebellious. Makarov had reasons to be unsettled. "I appreciate the trust, Master, but let's forget the guildmaster candidate talk for now," Chess replied dryly. "You brat! I never wanted you to be guildmaster anyway," Makarov snapped, then immediately buzzed with childish energy. He flicked Chess on the forehead. "And stop calling me old man. Use my title. I am the guildmaster." Yes, keep being guildmaster forever," Chess said smoothly. Before the banter could go any further, a roar from downstairs cut through the terrace. "Don't worry about that now. The Miss Fairy contest is starting." In an instant, Makarov's worries evaporated. He sprinted down the stairs with surprising speed, disappearing into the crowd. Chess shook his head, smiling despite himself. "Old pervert," he muttered. The hall was packed. Locals and tourists jammed every seat. The ratio of men to women was absurdly skewed. On stage, the host Marcus grabbed a microphone. "Hello, everyone. I'm Marcus, your host for the Miss Fairy Beauty Contest," he called. He leaned into the crowd with a joking grin. "Any friends who came all the way from the land of the dead, remember to head back to the cemetery when it's over." Whether a joke to get a laugh or a genuine jape, it worked. The crowd roared. Marcus built the excitement. "Are you ready for a visual feast? I declare the Miss Fairy Selection Contest open." The men in the audience exploded in cheers. After a dramatic pause, Marcus announced the first contestant. First on stage, card mage Kana Alberona. The curtains opened. Kana strode out with an arrogant smile. And then, card magic wrapped around her like fabric. She transformed into a revealing swimsuit that showed off her perfect proportions. The audience's cheers rose as their eyes devoured the sight. "Of course it's a swimsuit," Lucy muttered from the side of the stage, scouting. Marcus continued with quick introductions. Number 2, Juvia, appeared in a cool-toned swimsuit. Her beauty was obvious, but her constant cries of "Grey Sama" were a mark against her in many eyes. Number 3, Mira, caused a stir the instant she came on, then ruined it by using transformation magic in the strangest way. She kept her original body, but replaced her head with those of Happy, Gajil, and Chess in turn. The bizarre gag destroyed her chances as a serious contender. Happy laughed so hard he thumped the table. Chess and Gajil looked like they'd choke on their own blood. Urza followed, wearing a gothic Lolita transformation that captured the lecherous crowd's full attention. She quickly became a favorite. Levy and Biska came on after, but opted not to change into swimsuits and were largely unremarkable. Marcus cranked the tension higher. Up next, though not officially a member of Fairy Tale, she might as well be, Black Magician Girl. A roar broke the limits of the hall. Many in attendance had come specifically for the weekly magazine's cover girl. Pink light flared from behind the curtain as the Black Magician Girl descended on her staff, sailed above the audience, and landed center stage with her signature peace sign. "Hello, everyone. I am." Her line was cut off by a low, confident female voice. Next up, contestant number 9, Evergreen. Evergreen walked out in a green tunic, a fairy tale ribbon fluttering at her back, holding an ornate folding fan. She moved with calm self-assurance, the fan opening slowly in her hand. Her gaze swept the crowd, arrogant, commanding. "The word fairy and the word beauty, those are mine," she declared. "I embody both, so naturally, the crown should be mine." She closed the fan with a sharp clap and with a cold smile added, "All right, this tedious contest ends here." Evergreen. Before the Fairy Tale members could react, Evergreen used her folding fan as a shield and took off her glasses. Her pupils swirled with magic circles as she fixed her gaze on the Black Magician Girl, who happened to be closest. "Careful, don't look at her eyes," Gray shouted, but his warning came too late. The Black Magician Girl froze mid-step, turning into a stone statue. Evergreen's eye magic, anyone who made eye contact with her was petrified on the spot. It was a rigid, absolute kind of power. The only weakness was line of sight. Nothing could block it, not even ordinary glasses. The sudden turn of events sent the hall into chaos. Marcus barked orders for everyone, citizens, tourists, to flee and take shelter. The spectators scattered, leaving the guild in disarray. When did this idiot become such a good actor? Chess folded his arms and watched the petrified Black Magician Girl with a bored expression. Seeing her panic-stricken face and recalling her ditzy personality, he thought to himself, "This doesn't look staged at all." Soon only the Fairy Tale members remained in the ruined hall. "Evergreen, are you trying to ruin the festival?" Makarov demanded. Even though Chess's earlier warning had softened the surprise, the guildmaster's face was dark with anger. That one of Laxus's personal guards had done this, petrifying comrades, confirmed the worst fears he'd been unwilling to entertain. "A festival needs some entertainment, doesn't it?" Evergreen ignored him and stepped forward, spreading her arms. With a sweep of her hand, the stage curtain opened. Every woman who had appeared earlier, Mira, Urza, and the others, stood on the stage as cold, rigid statues. From the stunned looks on their faces, it was clear none of them had been prepared. That was why even veteran fighters like Mira and Urza had fallen. They'd let their guard down for one moment, trusting their partners. Evergreen's announcement continued in a flat voice. "The festival is just beginning. The strongest of Fairy Tale. Let's settle this." Fried, green-haired, and sword in hand, materialized at Evergreen's side. "The strongest! The strongest!" he crowed. Big Slow dropped from the rafters wearing a steel helmet, a row of oddly shaped small dolls floating behind him, his star chart, puppet possession. "Evergreen, what did you do to my sister?" someone yelled. "Undo Biska's petrification." "Levy!" Elfman, Alzak, Troy, and others exploded with rage and dashed forward, ignoring Freed's taunts. Thunder rolled and blinding arcs of electricity descended to surround the petrified women, Laxus's trademark presence. "Laxus!" The crowd shouted. The Thunder God tribe had appeared, electricity dancing around Laxus's hands. Elfman and the others halted, worried that any rash move might electrocute their comrades. "Don't be so impatient," Laxus said, scanning the hall with cold amusement. His gaze lingered on Chess for a moment before settling on Makarov. "Let's fight. Last one standing in this fairy war wins," he declared. Natsu, not yet understanding the full gravity, cracked his knuckles and jumped at Laxus with blazing punches, raging with straightforward bravado. Before he could reach the stage, a thunderous boom erupted and a bolt of yellow lightning knocked him out of the air, slamming him into the floor. Laxus brushed dust from his clothes and sneered at the fallen Natsu. "Compared to cowards who won't even fight, I actually respect your directness." "Enough. Laxus, undo Mira and the others' petrification, and this farce can end now." Makarov snapped. He took a step forward and grew in stature, veins bulging with anger. "Farce? Don't be naive, old man," Laxus retorted coldly. "This is war. If you refuse to follow the rules, those women die. Seeing the petrified comrades wrapped in electricity, Makarov paled. Even though he had prepared himself mentally, Laxus's dark threat extinguished whatever hope he had left. He couldn't act rashly with so many lives at stake. Evergreen took another step closer. If you want them returned to normal, defeat us. Fried explained the conditions in a calm, almost gleeful voice. 3-hour time limit. The battlefield is all of Magnolia. You can come find us if you like. There are 4 of us and over 100 of you. The advantage is clearly on your side. Big Slow stuck out his huge tongue branded with the fairy tale emblem and laughed. Just as they were about to leave, Chess stepped forward from the crowd. Card magic circles glimmered and card monsters, Black Magician, Summoning of the Demon, Curse Dragon, Citadel Wing Dragon, Knight 3 Musketeers, Elf Swordsman, appeared around him in a swirl, magic power radiating from the summons like a pressure wave. I told you not to be so impatient, Laxus growled to someone. Then, realizing things were changing, added, you misunderstood. Chess halted and regarded Laxus coolly. 4 against 100 is boring, he said. Since it's a festival, why not make it more interesting? He waved his hand. The card monsters turned into streaks of light and shot out of the guild in every direction, vanishing into the streets of Magnolia. During this civil war, I release the cards from my control. Any side that finds them can try to persuade them to join. Even the Thunder God tribe looked stunned. The fairy tale members, too, gaped with disbelief. Chess, Makarov started, frowning. He couldn't fathom why chess would complicate an already dire situation. Chess grinned and shrugged. I'm gonna play neutral. You're just saying that? Laxus sneered. You can stop the war whenever you like? Neutral? What a joke. These are my rules, Laxus snarled. To him, the whole civil war was a cleansing, make the weak leave the guild so he could take control. The only people he respected were Chess and Mistigan. He had never taken Urza or Mira seriously. Now Chess, the only real rival, refused to fight and claim neutrality. Laxus's arrogance couldn't accept it. Or we can smash those statues now and finish this here, he threatened. Chess met Laxus's blazing glare without flinching. He'd acted cold and detached because he trusted Laxus wouldn't actually kill their comrades. Even if something went wrong, resurrection magic could reverse things. He had the initiative. Are you threatening me, Chess? Laxus's eyes turned lethal. Chess smiled. Do you remember my last offer? If I lose this war, I'll accept standing beside you. Laxus's fury cooled. Heh, the strongest guild needs people like you, he said with a grudging smile. All right, I'll accept your condition if you can stand beside me afterwards. Then let's begin, the fairy war. Lightning lit the hall as Laxus and the Thunder God tribe vanished. Left on the stage stood only cold stone statues. Elfman and the others, unable to accept this, charged out of the guild to confront Laxus and save their friends. The Kuriboh's Chess had summoned at the entrance to follow targets, multiplied as Chess used a magic card, trailing after them. Those fluffy little monsters would track the fighters, record the battles with a magic camera, and deliver the footage to the Black Magician. More importantly, they were there to guard lives, ready to intervene if anyone's life was at real risk. In an instant, the noisy, crowded guild was reduced to a handful: Makarov, Chess, an unconscious Natsu, and Happy. So, Chess, Makarov said quietly now that he was back to his small old man form, you expected Laxus would do this? As expected. You can't hide anything from me, old man, Chess replied with a sheepish scratch of his head. His confidence calmed Makarov somewhat, though the guildmaster still worried. He looked at the frozen women and asked, Can you guarantee Urza and the others' safety? Chess's smile vanished. Yes. Makarov relaxed enough to hand the decision over. Then I'll leave it to you. Chess bowed and prepared to leave. I'll go get ready. Someone will probably come to challenge the neutral party. Hey, Chess, stop right there, Natsu shouted from behind. He'd come to and learned what happened. Neutral party means if I beat you, you join us, right? That's the deal, if you can beat me. Before Chess could finish, Natsu barreled forward. A few meters later, he crashed front first into an invisible barrier and skidded to a stop, face twisted in pain. Why can't I get out? Makarov looked up at floating letters forming a magic seal. No one over 80 or stone statues may pass. He read it aloud. Letter magic is a type of rule barrier that traps anyone inside unless they obey its conditions. It had to be preset and fixed. It couldn't be altered on the fly. Wait, the rule of the formula is absolute, which means… Makarov clapped a hand to his forehead. Natsu, are you already 80? What? Am I 80? Natsu stared at his own hands in horror, bewildered. Happy zipped through the barrier and taunted him. Hey, I can go in and out, Natsu. Chess had expected this. He waved cheerfully at Natsu from beyond the doorway. Talk later. Bye-bye. With that, he streaked down the street like a flash of gold and disappeared. Damn it! I need to beat Chess and Laxus to win the title, Natsu screamed, punching and kicking the invisible wall. Fighting was all he understood. Makarov's voice was low and grave. Natsu, this isn't a game. It's about Urza and the others' lives. What are you talking about, old man? Laxus is a jerk, but he's one of our guild. He must be joking. Natsu couldn't fathom that Laxus would genuinely hurt their comrades. Guildmaster, I agree, a small voice said. Lucy, who had hidden in a corner of the stage to survive, stepped forward. Makarov blinked in surprise. Lucy had only recently joined the guild and had been threatened by Laxus too, but she met his gaze firmly. Don't get any ideas, Guildmaster. I have no good feelings for Laxus. Lucy trusted Chess more than Laxus now. If Laxus really wanted to hurt Urza and the others, Chess would have already forced his hand. That's why he could propose the neutral party rule. Makarov breathed, understanding settling in. Worry had clouded his judgment. With Chess's reassurance and Lucy's clarity, he could see what Chess had been doing, buying time and controlling risks. A panel of purple light appeared by the door, the floating letters turning into a live feed of battle reports. Real-time battle report, attaching magic Nabu versus dancer magic Vegeta, Nabu wins. Telepathy magic Warren versus sand magic, Warren wins. Purple flame magic Macau versus smoke magic Wakaba, fierce combat. Wood make magic Laki successfully persuaded card monster Queen Knight to join the team. Jet failed to persuade summoning of the demon, but succeeded in giving it a trendy afro. They're having fun fighting out there. Natsu raged at the scrolling reports, breathless with frustration. He started blasting at the barrier with Dragon Slayer flames. Do you see that as fun? Lucy snapped, pointing at the panel. Her tone hardened. All right, I'll go capture Chess, the neutral party. Happy chimed in from the air. Hey, Lucy. I don't know what makes you so confident, but you're brave. Shut up, you walking furball. Don't underestimate my bond with Chess. Lucy shot back. She couldn't take on Laxus, but she thought she might be able to talk Chess into coming back. To prove herself, and maybe show off a little, she darted out of the guild and disappeared down the street. Guilty as charged, a plump artist, Lidus, shuffled forward from behind a pillar. He'd been too scared of Laxus to rush out with the others, and now looked woefully apologetic. Makarov put a comforting hand on his shoulder. Don't blame yourself. Let Chess and the others deal with Laxus. But I need you to fetch Porliusica from the cabin in the eastern forest. Porliusica was Fairy Tale's consulting pharmacist. With all the fighting ahead, medical preparation was necessary, just in case someone needed immediate treatment, and perhaps she might have a cure for petrification. I'll go, Lidus said eagerly, glad to be useful. Natsu watched people leave, grinding his teeth and cursing Laxus and Freed. Can you keep it down? You're disturbing my nap, a dry voice said from above. Gajeel jumped down from a beam, annoyed. You want to die, you hot-headed fool? Natsu couldn't resist snapping back, but Gajeel pushed past him, dismissing the argument. We'll settle scores later. Right now, stop Laxus. Got it, Guildmaster? Makarov nodded. Do your best. Gajeel strode toward the exit with the usual ironclad confidence. Then thump, he slammed straight into the invisible barrier as hard as anyone had yet. The impact sounded echoed through the hall, louder than Natsu's. For a beat, the guild was silent. Happy. Chapter 160, about having Yu-Gi-Oh! Card duels in the fairy tale world. On the outskirts of Magnolia, in an abandoned factory, the rusted iron walls hid a surprising scene. Where industrial waste should have been, a clean, square platform stood instead. About the size of a basketball court, it had a lift at each side. At the top, an operating panel fed projections from magic power projectors and bore 2 rows of card zones. As expected. This world makes things easy, Chess said, pleased, standing on one of the lifts as a projection of Blue Eye's white dragon shimmered on the platform below. This was the Yu-Gi-Oh! Dueling field he'd spent 5 days building specifically for the fairy tale Civil War. Fighting and persuasion had never been his thing, so before anyone from Fairy Tale or the Thunder God tribe could hope to win him over, this so-called neutral party, the condition was simple. Play cards. It was a rare opportunity to indulge in card games. Chess had even gone to a Magnolia barbershop for a slightly offbeat crab-like hairstyle, all for the ceremony of it. Everything's ready. Time to let the others know where I am. He clapped, and dark gold magic gathered at his fingertips, forming light bullets that shot through the factory roof and burst into sparkles in the shape of cards. The display grabbed Fairy Tale's attention immediately, but there was no time to waste. They only paused briefly before unleashing their magic again to continue battling. Fried's trap had been set. The only way to leave the spell's range was to defeat your opponent. Bang, bang, bang. Rumble, rumble. Magnolia erupted. Mages were dueling everywhere. Tourists who'd come for the town's fame were bewildered, while locals, used to the chaos, shrugged and reassured them. Those fairy tale folks loved making a scene. Normally, a surge of magic like this would alarm the Magic Council, but within Magnolia, it had become a familiar kind of chaos, largely thanks to Fairy Tale's notorious reputation. And in the middle of it all was chess, his chess rules determining the terms. The Civil War caused some property damage, but compared to the town's usual stoicism, it was only a minor disturbance. Inside the guild, though, a worried Makarov watched updates flicker across a purple text panel before him. Gray versus Big Slow. Gray unable to fight. Evergreen successfully persuaded Elf Swordsman. Elfman petrified. Alzak versus Giant Shield Guardian. Alzak wins. Jet and Troy out. Wakaba. Marcus failed to win over neutral party chess. Current remaining total 17. 30 minutes until the stone statues are destroyed. Aha! That Gray's pathetic. He couldn't even beat Big Slow. Natsu laughed when he read the panel. His laugh didn't last. He punched the air wall in frustration. Damn it! Only 17 left. How am I supposed to get out of here? I'm already 80. Gajeel squatted nearby, counting the passing years on his fingers, a mournful aura about him. The more he complained, the less he seemed able to accept the situation. Happy suddenly noticed a cruel detail. Even though he was a Fairy Tale member, he wasn't included in the count. Guildmaster, Fried's being unfair. He's discriminating against small animals. The deadpan cat dropped from the air onto Makarov and demanded compensation. At least 5 fish. Is now the time to fuss about that? Makarov scolded. Happy immediately burst into tears, trotting to a corner and shedding small pearls. Makarov sighed and, defeated, promised, all right, I'll get you fish. Really? Then put the guild's seal on this compensation form. Happy brightened, producing a form from somewhere. Makarov just held his head and turned back to the flashing panel. New lines scrolled across it. Fried successfully won over Dark Magician, defeating Lidas in the eastern suburbs. Lidas tried to break the rules and leave the town's range. Alzak versus Laki. Both lose combat capabilities simultaneously. Mob A versus Mob B, mob recruitment. Mob A wins. That bastard Fried didn't even spare Lidas, who wasn't trying to join the fight, and Makarov's eyes narrowed. Dark Magician actually chose his side? Chess's ace monster, Dark Magician, wasn't just powerful. His understanding of magical paths and his research were unfathomable. Among all the neutral card monsters chess could summon, Dark Magician was unquestionably the strongest. Makarov ran through the remaining members in his mind and realized, with a cold dread, that no one left could easily beat the Fried plus Dark Magician combination. This is bad, he admitted. Happy read the panel too and tried to reassure him. Guildmaster, don't worry. We still have someone who can handle that combo. Natsu grinned wickedly, and Makarov's face soured at the look. Predictably, Natsu stalked over to the petrified Urza and started plotting in an obnoxious whisper. We should revive Urza, an opportunity for revenge. Idiot, what are you doing? Makarov roared. You'll ruin everything. Heh, of course I'm going to melt the surface of the stone with fire. Natsu stepped forward with a crude grin and waggled his fingers, spitting flames toward Urza's stone statue. There has to be a limit to how stupid she. Natsu, you'll burn Urza completely. Happy, and Makarov cried out. There was a sharp crack along the side of Urza's statue. Ah! I haven't even touched her yet. Natsu panicked. Stop shouting and weld the crack with my iron. Gajeel said calmly, drawing his iron dragon sword. But before they could act, Makarov's terrified roar echoed through the guild. Crack, crack! The fissures raced across the statue until, with a bang, it shattered. Urza did not turn to dust. The stone split and she fell back into her original form, blinking blearily. So hot! You did this, Natsu, she snapped, and with lightning speed, she kicked him across the hall. He slammed into the guild wall and slid down like a rag doll. No one cared enough to help him. Wait, Urza, you're okay? Makarov asked. Urza touched her right eye and took a breath. It must be my artificial eye. When I was a statue, I could hear what was happening. Guildmaster, let me stop Laxus. From the conversation she'd overheard, she understood why Chess had chosen to be neutral. She could sympathize with that position. Unlike someone with prophetic powers, she couldn't easily accept Laxus's betrayal of his comrades. But Laxus is dangerous alone. My suggestion is to bring Chess back first. Makarov glanced worriedly at her. Urza was strong, but going after Laxus alone was suicide. Chess was the preferable candidate to handle him. Urza's lips curved. She meant Lucy, who had rushed out. Don't worry, Guildmaster. Before taking care of Laxus, I'll find Evergreen and have her undo the petrification. The hostages were the reason Freed's plan worked. If the petrified members could be restored, they could swarm Laxus and overwhelm him, maybe even without Chess. Makarov nodded. Urza ran out of the guild, determined, and began searching for Evergreen. In the original flow of events, she would find her, but this time, fate had other plans. Outside Magnolia, Lucy reached the abandoned factory after a hurried run. Since the guild was far away, she'd taken quite a while, but she hadn't run into the trauma of fighting comrades, thanks to starting later than most. She pushed open the rusty door and stepped inside. Bright sunlight fell across the magnificent dueling platform. Lucy gasped. Yo, didn't expect you here, little sis. Chess, sitting on the field, stood up slowly. Chess Gee? Lucy blurted. She instantly noticed his odd haircut. What is that? It looks more like a crab than Keisha's. Ha! Pretty awesome, right? Chess struck a card player pose. Lucy didn't know how to respond, but that didn't matter. She straightened, brushed golden hair from her face, and gave a flirtatious blink and a high-pitched plea. Kind and handsome Chess Gege, can you help me defeat that bad guy Laxus? Chess fell silent. He'd planned his next lines, chosen a card combination to make her cry later. Then she came at him with that act. Before he could reply, a mocking voice echoed through the factory. Heh. You don't actually think that low-level seduction can sway Chess, do you? Evergreen stepped forward, half her face hidden by a folding fan, her steps leisurely. All your sexiness pales before a true fairy. Lucy's mouth twitched. I really want to hit her. Evergreen glanced at Lucy with disdain, then turned to Chess. Come on, Chess, if you're aesthetic. A roar of magic interrupted her. A storm of dark gold power swirled around Chess. His eyes glittered fanatically. This isn't a beauty contest, he bellowed. You have two choices, play cards with me or fight me. Testing a duelist with charm? Ridiculous. The brutal magic made Evergreen's confidence waver. It had worked on elf swordsmen. Lucy froze, a cartoonish expression on her face. I choose to play cards, both women blurted out, in perfect unison. Only a fool would pick a straight fight with that power. No problem, Chess grinned and let the storm subside. He tossed each of them a pair of glasses and a small booklet. There are 10 decks for you to choose from. The deck details and the rules are in the booklet. Read them quickly with the Windsong glasses. Windsong glasses were a magic tool that let someone read books quickly. Evergreen caught both items easily. Lucy, a bit clumsy, only caught the glasses at first and fumbled to pick up the booklet. Within seconds, they'd both scanned the rules. For their first time, Chess chose the oldest, simplest Yu-Gi-Oh! Rules, first-generation Dueling Monsters gameplay. Evergreen chose My Valentine's deck without hesitation. Harpy Ladies suited her image as a fairy. Lucy picked Yugi Muto's deck by instinct. Chess explained the format. Since you both arrived at the same time, you'll duel each other first. The winner stays and gets to challenge me. They had no objections. The card rules were clear and intriguing, and winning meant gaining a powerful ally, an irresistible bargain. The two women accepted their decks, stepped onto the facing lifts, and pressed their buttons together. Duel start, they said at the same time. Evergreen.